All right, good evening. I call to order the Murray City Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, October 17th, 2024. It is 6:32 p.m. Present this evening, we have Commissioners Ned Hacker, Pete Herstow, Michael Henry, Michael Richards, Jake Pearson, Lisa Malkiewicz, and I am Maren Patterson. I'm the chair. From staff, we have Zachary Smallwood, David Rogers, Ruth Rurock, and Mark Richardson is here with us also. We welcome the public. We are always grateful when you are here and participate in our meetings. Some etiquette items to review. We ask that you take a moment to silence your cell phones. And when the time comes to make a comment on an agenda item, we ask that you would come to the podium and speak into the microphone, which is recording. We also ask that you state your name and address for the minutes. Once the item that you are here for is over, you are welcome to leave. We just ask that you do so quietly so that we can continue with our remaining items on our agendas. If you are viewing this meeting online on the live stream, the only way to make a public comment is to email planningcommission@murray.utah.gov. If you post a comment on the Facebook or YouTube stream, it will not be seen. So we'll start with our business items. Approval of minutes, we had none, so we will move on to conflicts of interest. Do any of the commissioners have a conflict of interest with any of the agenda items tonight? No. Neither do I. Approval of findings of fact. Have the commissioners had an opportunity to review the findings of fact and conclusions?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion? I'll entertain a motion.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the findings of facts for Vera Salon Suites.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on to our agenda item number 4, a conditional use permit for Soccer House LLC. Is the applicant here with us? Okay, great. We'll have you come up in just a minute. Thanks so much. First, we'll have a staff report by Ruth Rurock.
Thank you. So here we have an application for a conditional use permit for an indoor soccer field located at 4083 South, 420 West. So here, the proposed soccer field would occupy a 6,000 square foot building on a 2.9 acre lot, and the site is highlighted in blue on this map. And here is the zoning map to show that the subject property is zoned for MG or manufacturing general, and it's surrounded by other properties zoned for MG as well. And here are the site plan and floor plan provided by the applicant to show how the existing building will be utilized. It'll include artificial turf for the soccer field, 2 office spaces, and spectator seating. And so the subject property has a shared access point at 500 West, which is circled in red on the map. This access also leads into a private lane, and so as a condition of approval, the access at 500 West will be restricted. And the total number of parking stalls required is 23, and the applicant has provided the required number of stalls, but as a condition of approval, we'll need to restripe the parking lot. And per city code, we sent out 15 notices to the public for this proposal, and we have not received any comments. So based on our analysis, these are our findings, that the proposed use for an indoor soccer field is allowed in the MG zone, subject to conditional use permit approval. And with the conditions outlined in the staff report, the proposed use and property will comply with the standards of Murray City Land Use Ordinance. And finally, the proposed use is not contrary to the goals and objectives of the Murray City General Plan. And so with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve a conditional use permit for this project at this property, subject to the following conditions. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
On your pictures on this thing, have you shown the, can you go back to the overhead plot, please? Is that the correct section of that building that's marked, or is it the northwest section?
Yes, that's the correct.
Or is it the whole building?
It's just that portion of the building.
Okay, because that doesn't look like it complies to the address that's written down here.
I'm sure it does.
Okay, that, in one of the items that you gave us, I'm just trying to understand which part of the building they're going to be using. This handout that you gave us, that looks like that's marked as 41, or 4091 South. So I'm just trying to understand which part of the building is.
No, it's split into four, and it's 40, that section highlighted is correct.
Oh, I
It's
know
40.
that, I know it's split into four, and at least on this one handout you gave us, that section of the building is listed as 4091 South.
So I believe, can you show me what picture you're referencing? Okay, so yeah, that one was pulled from an old application. So as you can see, if you'll go forward one,
I think
please.
you might have it oriented wrong too, because wouldn't it be like this? So this says 4020 West,
Well, this actually is a
So-
very good picture.
but you're
It's
like oriented
this
the other way.
building that's
Look,
cut off
look
right
like
here.
that.
Yeah, that's the building that's cut off right there would be 4083. What we did is, so this was what the applicant provided to us. We couldn't adequately count the parking spaces that were previously approved in the development. So what I did is I went through some historic documents and found the one that you now have in your packet. And that's what we based our parking counts off of and the condition to restripe the parking based on that site plan.
Well, and on this picture here, you're showing the parking area, lights and everything, again, on the northwest part of the building and not the south.
Again, that was provided by the applicant, and we're using the one that, we are using the one that was provided in your packet. That's why I'm telling you that one right there is being used as how we counted their parking,
This one, I'm sorry.
is how we counted their parking. Because we could not see adequate parking in that area. We know it has it, and it's possible to have it. We just want to make sure that those are adequately striped in the future.
And I guess that goes to my next question, and I don't have any real problems with this. This sounds like a great use for this property, but why isn't the inclusion of the ADA striping one of the conditions?
It is. Oh, ADA?
So it would be required regardless, even in the parking. Our code does require that every 25 spaces, you have to have one ADA space. So that would be required in the code regardless of conditions. One that's in our land use code, but it's also in building code as well.
Wait. So how is, hold on. Where is it? Where's condition number 5? I mean, we could if we wanted to, right? We could just say.
It would be
and
redundant, but you could.
We could, well, I mean, we could just say in accordance with the code.
Again, if you want, it would be redundant, but yes, you could.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. If we could have the applicant come forward to the microphone. And if you could just state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name's Omar Jaimes. Our address is 4083 South, 420 West, Murray City, Utah.
Great. Have you had an opportunity to review the 6 conditions?
Yes.
And you'll be able to
Yeah,
comply with
absolutely,
those?
no problem. Yeah.
Okay, great. Is there any additional information you want to give the commission about your project?
Nope. No additional information.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
At this time, I will open the meeting for public comment regarding this item. If you would like to make a public comment on this agenda item, you may do so by coming to the podium. Please state your name and address into the microphone for the record before your comment and try to keep your thoughts to 3 minutes. We ask that you offer new information in your comments and please do not rehash already stated concerns. After the public comment portion of this meeting, we will address your questions and concerns with the applicant or staff. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment regarding this agenda item? Did we receive any online? All right. I will close the public comment period and bring it back for discussion or a motion.
So I have a question for the applicant. Does he need to come back up?
Yeah, will you come back?
Thanks. So I'm just curious about the size of the field. It seems like a smaller field, with the recommended soccer field usually around 200 feet by 95 feet.
Yeah.
Curious, and then you're also going to add bleachers and spectator space. Curious why it's smaller.
That's we try to maximize space, but also allowing enough space for spectators. We wish it was bigger. Unfortunately, it's not. We're also not going to use, usually in indoor soccer, you do 6v6. We're doing it 5v5.
Okay, that makes sense. I just was curious.
Yeah, no problem.
And it'll be soccer, not foosball or something else that's usually on a smaller
It's
court?
going to be soccer, yeah. Yep, just soccer.
Awesome. No, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, I guess I didn't give you a chance when the applicant was up here. Yeah, any discussion or motion?
Madam Chairman, I'd make motion that the planning commission approve a conditional use permit to allow an indoor soccer field at the property address 4083 South, 420 West, subject to the following conditions 1 through 6.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Hacker and a second by Commissioner Richards for the Planning Commission to approve a conditional use permit to allow an indoor soccer field at the property address 4083 South, 420 West, subject to the 6 conditions. Is there any discussion on that motion?
No.
We can take a vote.
Sorry, I got lost in thought for a moment. Commissioner Milkovich,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hursto,
Yes.
and Chair Patterson.
Yes. So motion approves. Good luck with your project. Thank you for being here. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 5, Addison Vista subdivision amendment. Are the is the applicant here? Okay, great. We'll have a presentation by staff.
Thank you, Commissioners. So this is a subdivision amendment for the Addison Vista subdivision regarding the properties at 818 West and 822 West Addison Vista Circle. This is an overview that kind of orients where this subdivision is off of 7th West and Bullion Street. This is the surrounding zoning. It is an R18 zone and is surrounded by R18 and A1, so everything around it is residential. The 2 lots are both under a 1/4 acre. So this is the current subdivision. We're looking at lots 5 and 6, and you can see how it's more of a straight line there on the north end of how those 2 lots connect. And the applicants are looking to adjust the property line. You can see I've just focused on those 2 northern lots and lots 5 and 6. And they will be adjusting it by approximately 278 square feet that will be moved from one lot to the other lot. 16 public notices were mailed in connection with this proposed subdivision amendment, and as of the date of this meeting, staff has not received any emails. Based on the analysis and review of the subdivision amendment, the subdivision of land is allowed by Utah State Code, and this proposed subdivision amendment will meet those requirements, and the proposed subdivision amendment complies with the regulations of Murray Code Title 16, the subdivision ordinance, and the applicable standards of Murray 17.100, which is the R18 zone. So with that, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the proposed subdivision amendment for the Addison Vista subdivision following to the following conditions, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I guess I have a question. I have the utmost confidence you've already done this, but so it's in the record, and because it's not in the written record for the public to read, we should just discuss it. With this adjustment, the lots both would meet the minimal lot sizes and all the setbacks required?
That is correct. So if you look on the new subdivision amendment here, you can see that both lots are over the 8,000 square foot minimum for the R18 zone, and the change in the property line does not impact any of the setbacks. Both of the setbacks, the 8-foot wide and the 12-foot wide setbacks, are shown on the plat.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, if the applicants want to come forward. Will you just state your name and address for the record?
I'm Carly Reese at 818 Addison Vista.
I'm Trenton Stapley at 822 Addison Vista.
Thank you so much for being here. Have you had a chance to review the conditions?
Yes,
And you'll be able to comply with those?
yes.
Great. Is there any additional information you would like to give the commission?
Nope.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any questions for the applicant before I send them back? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I will now open the meeting for public comment regarding this agenda item. If anyone would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period and bring back for discussion or a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll make another motion to approve the proposed subdivision amendment for Addison Vista subdivision, adjusting lots 5 and 6, which are the properties addressed 822 and 813 West Addison Vista Circle, subject to the following conditions as listed 1 through 3.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Hacker and a second by Commissioner Henry to approve the proposed subdivision amendment for Addison Vista subdivision, adjusting lots 5 and 6, which are the properties addressed 822 and 813 West Addison Vista Circle, subject to the 3 conditions. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right, let's take a vote.
Commissioner Haristo,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Milkovich,
Yes.
Chair Patterson.
Motion, yes. Motion approved. Thank you for coming tonight. All right. Agenda items 6 and 7 will be presented together. Is the applicant here? Oh, okay, great. So first we'll have a staff report.
Thank you, Commissioners. So this is a zoning map and general plan amendment for the property located at 6231 South, 900 East. This is an aerial overview. The site is just over 1 1/4 acres, and it will be going from the R18 single family zone to the GO general office zone. So this is the current zoning. As you can see, it's currently zoned R18. There is residential neighborhood business across the street. A1, which is low-density residential to the north. There's open space to the south, which is Wheeler Farm. And then there's R18 across the street further as well. The future land use map currently calls this area low-density residential with, as you can see, parks and open space to the south, low-density residential to the north, and residential business to the west. So low-density residential is intended for residential uses in established and planned neighborhoods, as well as low-density residential on former agricultural land. The corresponding zones are A1, R18, R16, R110, R112, and R210. And then the office, this designation allows for a wide range of office uses in an environment that is compatible with adjacent residential neighborhoods. Development patterns should establish the livability of surrounding residential neighborhoods while contributing to the success of nearby business areas. Development will generally be individual buildings or small clusters that are scaled similar to adjacent residential areas, and the corresponding zones are a GO general office, which is what we are looking for tonight, and the R&B residential neighborhood business zone. So these are the differences between the R18 and the GO. When you look at housing, in the GO, residential is not allowed except for assisted or retirement living facilities, whereas that is the main function of the R18 zone. The height is actually a little bit shorter in the GO than the R18, depending on distance from residential, but since this parcel is basically surrounded by residential, that 30-foot requirement would be the maximum. The setback, 20 feet in the GO compared to 25 feet in the R18. Rear yard setback is none under certain conditions, but next to residential it's 20 feet, whereas 25 feet in the R18. Side yard setbacks are 10 or 20 next to residential, whereas R18 is 8 with a total of 20. The corner yard setbacks are identical, and parking is between 4 and 5 spaces for every 1,000 square feet, compared to 2 spaces per lot for an R18. So the Murray City Code requires property owners be notified of rezones. And so 19 notices were sent for the requested amendments to the future land use map and zone map to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject property and to affected entities. And affected entities include things such as utilities and other cities. As of the date of the meeting, staff received 2 emails that were forwarded to the Planning Commission ahead of this meeting and are included in the record. So for our findings, and I mentioned in the pre-meeting, a change in the findings that I will discuss here. So the general plan provides for flexibility in implementation and execution of goals based on individual circumstances. Number two, amending the future land use map will allow for cohesion with neighboring business uses. I accidentally put residential in the staff reports, but business was the intended word there. The proposed zone map amendment from R18 to GO has been considered based on the characteristics of the site and surrounding area, and staff believes the potential impacts of the change can be managed within the uses that are allowed in the GO zone. And the proposed zone map amendment from R18 to GO conforms to goals and objectives of the Murray City General Plan and will allow for an appropriate development of the subject property. And so based on our findings and analysis, staff makes a recommendation to recommends that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval for both the Murray City General Plan Future Land Use Map and the Murray City Zoning Map to the City Council, redesignating the property located at 6231 South, 900 East from low-density residential to office in the Future Land Use Map, and from R18 single-family low-density residential to GO, General Office as described in the staff report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question about the height restriction next to residential. Does that mean that, so as we look at this map, we can see that there's houses to the east. But is the zone to the north, is it just because it's zoned residential to the setback? So the zoning is
Yes.
what is the setback?
The zoning is
not
what
the
determines it,
physical-
not the building.
Okay,
Yep, that's correct.
thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, if we could have the applicant come forward. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jared Cameron. The address is actually 6271 South, 900 East. But
Thank you,
all the
we'll
maps
correct
show the
that.
same.
Is there any information you'd like to give the commission about this application?
I'll try to keep it somewhat short for everybody. We've been working towards this goal. I've owned the land originally I owned it probably 12 or 13 years ago with a partner. I've since bought him out. He was the original guy that developed the entire neighborhood that everybody's concerned about to the east. I've since purchased him out. And over the years, we've had some different ideas. The original plan was 4 homes in there, and the neighbors didn't really want it. And then when I bought him out, I was planning on doing a single home in there and just splitting it in half, so 2/3 of an acre apiece on each side, and doing some small office building out front and then keeping the other half for myself. And the neighbors also didn't want to have that either. So the short version, we don't have access to the private lane to the north. So the past 4 or 5 years, I've been working with the city. It's been kind of low priority, but I need to do something with it because at this point I just grow a lot of weeds on it, which nobody's happy about that. But we've worked with the city over the years to go with, the couple options we came up with were general office, R&B, the commercial neighborhood business, and we even spoke about R16 to do that in there as well. And I think general office would provide the cleanest solution for it without getting as messy, I guess. I think it'll add a lot of value. The 3 or 4 years ago plan was to, which is because it was originally zoned agricultural, we changed it as a stepping stone process to R18, and I just did the whole thing all at that time. And the original plan back then, about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when we changed the zoning originally from agricultural, was to put the furthest east part adjacent to the neighborhood. I was gonna keep 1/3 of an acre for myself and build my own home back there still. And then I drew up a full set of plans, and at the end of and then have a building of some form out front with a general office. or one of the other zonings there that we spoke about. But at the end of the day, I drew up a full set of plans. I even had it turned into Murray City to approve it and everything. And at the end of the day, my wife nor I could swallow it to have a residential, being that we don't have access to the private lane, which is understood. We couldn't swallow it having, I have 4 kids, and it just didn't seem logical to have one single-family home tucked in there, which would have been great adjacent to Wheeler Farm. My folks actually live in that same neighborhood as all these others do. And it would have been great to have them live next to grandma and grandpa and all that great stuff. But to have one single home behind an office building of some form, it just didn't seem like the solution. And at the time, it was going into COVID, and we all got busy and had all the issues of getting a hold of anybody and everything else. We kind of just tabled it for a couple of years and let it go. And now I'm back. But I've spoke with the city council multiple times. I think the general office solution is the best solution for the given situation, for the kind of a transitional area. Is it perfect? I would like to do other things probably if I had my own opinion. But at the end of the day, I think it's a great solution for the given situation. And what I'd like to do, I mean, I can come up with ideas all day, but without getting up to bat, I don't know if it matters. But what I'd like to do is build a small building on 9th East, right adjacent, you know, with the setbacks and whatnot. And then a parking lot of some form. And then I'd like to do a small senior living home that's not really a nursing home by no means, because it's not big enough to supply all that kind of the needs that it needs to be. But that's what I'd like to do. I'm just trying to be honest with everybody and upfront. At the end of the day, if it doesn't work, I don't know if it will, but I think general office is still the best solution regardless of that. So that's all I've got. And
Questions for the applicant?
One of the first things you mentioned is that you had looked at putting 4 houses on that, and that was not approved, did I understand that?
yeah, originally with the neighborhood, we had the developer that developed the land that lived in the neighborhood at the time as well. We were gonna do 4 third-acre lots that access the private lane that is the same size of lot as all the other homes in the neighborhood, for the most part. And we thought that was a great solution, and in fairness to the situation, I was kind of letting him, the man's name is Terry Sider. I was kind of letting him take the lead because he lived in the neighborhood with all the people. So I kind of stayed out of the majority of the personal conversations or whatnot that come with it. But then the night before we went to this meeting, the planning meeting, we had a neighborhood meeting that I was involved in, and it was not a fun meeting. Nobody was happy about it, or at least some of the, I don't know if nobody was happy about it, but some of the people were very vocal against it. And we kind of took it off the table and left it at that. And then it went for 4 or 5 years before I purchased him out and tried to do the single home in there to keep it to myself. And I had another round of meetings with the neighborhood, and it's a no-go. I sincerely tried. I drew up a nice house. It's gonna cost me a small fortune to build. I'm a builder by,
Can I ask?
But
was-
that would have been in compliance with the zoning that was there at the time,
absolutely.
and access from 9th East.
We were trying to build my single home with access to the private lane.
Access to the private lane was the catch, right?
Correct. And the
Okay.
neighbors don't want any part of that, and I completely understand that. That's fine.
But why I asked, because it was your own property, you could have built the house and put the driveway on the other side if you wanted to, but the discussion was the use of the single lane, right, or the private lane?
Yes. So that it's a part of a neighborhood as opposed to what the round 3 that I did on a couple years ago to just do a single home myself adjacent to, driving through 9th East. It just didn't seem logical to And we really tried. I've drawn up 2 complete homes, and it just doesn't. That's why we've decided to just do all of it as a general office instead of trying to dice it up and do a little bit of both, because it just defeats the whole purpose. It just turns it
You
into a
have no
road.
right or access to that lane without the
What's that?
other. You have no right or access to that lane.
No, it's a
without-
private lane.
Okay.
It's a private lane, and it's completely understood.
Well, I don't, and Commission, don't we have something in our land ordinance saying that we can't build on private lanes?
You can't subdivide, right?
So the city wouldn't allow you to build on that private lane?
So because of that, I guess my question was, 9th East, I think, is a UDOT road. Have you been in conversations with them about
A little bit,
the access that you'd be able to get, because they're not always,
yeah.
sometimes kind of a
They're a
drawn-out
government
process.
organization,
Yeah.
which is work just like all government organizations.
And they're very restricting, I think, on a lot of their major roads.
They are, but at the end of the day, they can't deny me access. I purchased the land from UDOT. And
Right.
they flat out said that.
Just, I guess it would be how long it would take to be able to get those,
What's that?
how long it would take to maybe get the UDOT approvals to be able to do
I
that.
don't know. I haven't been up to bat to,
Yeah.
until you have a full set of plans and you're going for approval, it doesn't really matter. You just do everything with until you can do all that at the same time, it doesn't matter. They won't give you approval just on an empty lot either way.
Right,
That there's nothing to approve access to.
yeah. Any other questions for the applicant?
Just so that you are aware, they have given me preliminary approval originally when we spoke with them.
Okay,
But until it's done, that was all the time during COVID.
Uh-huh.
And it was everybody was efficiently working from home at the time. And I couldn't get a hold of a single person, and the main couple people there was a struggle.
yeah, I
So
know that's the issue other people have run
It
into
was.
is getting
It
UDOT
took-
approval.
It took like 4 months, because this was right at the thick of COVID in the spring and summer of 2020. And it was a disaster trying to get a hold of all the people at the state. You couldn't get a hold of anybody. It took like 4 or 5 months to go through it, and that was after I was frustrated, to say the least, and dealing with, you go to everybody's boss to get people to do their job.
Yeah.
Which was sad.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll have you take a seat.
Okay.
And I will now open, where's my little paper? I'll open the meeting for public comment regarding this item. Again, you will have 3 minutes for your thoughts, and we ask that you don't restate something that has already been said. And any questions that you have will be addressed after the public meeting is closed. So if anyone would like to come make a public comment.
Hello, my name's Len Smith, and I live at 980 East Wheeler Farm Cove. So if you brought that sketch back up again, our home is to the east, and we live in an HOA with 7 other homes. So like Jared, I agree, not excited about the idea of having somebody build an office building and having my home right next to that. I'll read the letter that I wrote to the commission. In late 2019, we began searching for a home in the Murray area. We built a new home in 2016, just off Highland Drive and 5600 South. Within a year, we began having difficulty entering onto Highland Drive from our neighborhood due to traffic congestion. We discovered the city planned several new developments that would only increase the traffic on Highland Drive and further exacerbate street access. We found a home in Wheeler Farm Cove in 2020 and checked the zoning for the adjoining properties and found them to be residential. We confirmed this with the HOA president and moved forward with our purchase, comforted in knowing 2 sides of our property joined Wheeler Farm and would always be zoned agricultural, and 2 sides would always be residential. The traffic on 9th East is problematic. I don't know whether any of you have ever been there on a Sunday morning during the Wheeler Farm farmers market. I think that's a great project, by the way. I think it's wonderful for all of us. But it is absolutely a zoo. We cannot get out of our driveways. And there's not a lot of police maintenance of 9th East. And I think there's certainly a lot of other things that they're dealing with, but people drive 50 to 60 miles an hour on 9th East now. And when we go to pull out, you cannot see either to the north or the south, so we have to creep out, and then we jump on it on our cars to be able to pull out into the lane. And anybody that has a State Farm insurance that has that little thing where they keep track of your speed and your acceleration, we all get notices. So to me, adding a commercial building with potentially multiple occupants will only add to the difficulty entering 9th East and increase the risk of serious accidents. Vehicles routinely drive on 9th East at 50 miles an hour and faster. The applicant, Mr. Jared Cameron, requested a change from agricultural to residential prior to our purchasing our property, and this request was granted. I think it's great. I request the current classification be maintained. Further, I do not think an applicant should be allowed to request a zoning change without offering agricultural or architectural renderings of the proposed structure, specific use plans, so the zoning commission can evaluate the impact on existing residences and the traffic patterns on 9th East. I would welcome all of you to drive to our lane, the private lane we're talking about here. It's a beautiful little lane that leads back to 7 homes. Changing that and building an office building there that's 30 feet high, that's going to border that, to me is absurd. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Do you want any questions before I sit down?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you have any questions before I sit down, or do you want me to?
No, we don't have questions for the public.
Hi, I'm Joyce Swan. I too live on Wheeler Farm Cove. I'm actually representing Kevin and Becky Potts, who are also residents on Wheeler Farm Cove, and they are out of town. They didn't receive this notice prior to making their plans. So I will read the letter that they've
We
constructed.
received a letter in our packet from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I
So their
okay?
public comment has been made, but if you want to make a public comment for yourself.
Is it the same letter?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Is that fair not to read it, I guess?
Well,
Okay.
their public comment is part of the record that's been included in our packets. Like, we've all gotten it and read it already. So,
Okay. Just a couple of comments. I agree with Len that it's so hard to come in and out of Wheeler Farm Cove now. I mean, it's just, you have to kind of plan your time of day. You don't want traffic, you don't want traffic at rush hour or at certain times of day for that reason. I agree to put any sort of commercial building on that would be wrong. The fact that he wants to put his home on there, that's fine with him. That was the plan in the beginning. And that we've denied him access to our lane. That is a private lane, and we all pay for that lane. And it belongs to us, and we've chosen not to share that with any other residents building outside of that. So I agree with the others that it should stay residential. So,
thank you.
okay, that's all I've got.
And just so the public knows, those letters that were sent in were already sent to all commissioners, and we've had a chance to read them, so that is already part of the public record.
Well, my name's Russell Swan. I also live on Wheeler Farm Cove in Murray, been a Murray resident all my life. And I have some different questions. I come up with the same thing. It shouldn't be there. It's wrong. You should keep it in the development where it is on the same zoning. Have you guys looked at how narrow that lot is? Have you seen the narrowness of it? Have you seen the big power poles out in front of? These are not small power poles. And I'd like to go back where it says the panel approves this. I thought this meeting was to find out if it was going to be approved or not. So you guys have already made your mind up that it will be approved? Is that what we're talking here? And do we find out who on the panel approves this? I'm very confused at the way you look at things. I don't know how in the world you can look at this and want to put a go zoning in it. It befounds me. That's my viewpoint on it. I hope you can look at it, make proper sense of this decision, and do the right thing and keep the zoning the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we address his question about?
We'll address it after, yeah.
My name is Carl Lind. I live immediately adjacent to this property to the north on a 10-acre piece of ground that was my grandfather's and father's and is still agricultural ground. It appears to me that this is kind of like asking for zoning along Walker Lane to commercial property. For this reason, the Skaggs homes are immediately north of, or east of this property across Little Cottonwood Creek. The very nice development which has been done in Wheeler Farm Cove is all of homes that are expensive, much like the properties that you might know well in Holiday. The 10 acres which we own, currently I'm a man of 87 years of age, unlikely to build on it or do anything to it, but in the future I would think that you have a resource there for some magnificent homes along a creek that will definitely be detracted from if you zone commercial property immediately on the immediate south and along 9th East. Now given, 9th East is a major tributary for traffic. It is a nightmare, especially if I have to pull a hay trailer out. I've asked your Murray City Police to escort me at 2 a.m. so that I could get a 65-foot truck and trailer out of those driveways onto 9th East without injuring the motorcyclists who choose that time of the morning for a raceway on 9th East. I have a proposal. I received in the last week this billing from you, which is if I recall, it's a stormwater creative billing that I got shortly after Murray City was incorporated. And since I have a lot of buildings on the property, barns and other buildings, I'm paying some fairly significant. I get a number of these, sometimes 5 of them at a time. I would suggest that Murray City considers seriously purchasing this property. To do so, you could divert the funds from this rainwater billing that everyone in Murray is paying for, donate or allow the county to purchase that property and extend Wheeler Farm to the driveway of Wheeler Farm Cove. It would be a great, augmentation of what is needed at Wheeler Farm, and for the same time, I think could be paid for as you are currently paying for this building. I would caution you about setting the standard here for commercial housing on this side of 9th East, because I think you have a gem there for future beautiful homes that you will change now. Are you ready to zone the entire frontal of that property on the east side of 9th East commercial?
That's your time. Thank you.
I guess we could, you want to ask for clarification?
Hello, my name's Kaylin Nielsen. I too am a resident of Wheeler Farm Cove. I had a couple of questions when I was reviewing what independent living or assisted living requirements were. It was much different than the regular general office requirements. And so it had, like, if you were doing a studio or if you were doing a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom suite within the independent or assisted living headquarters, then there would have to be specific parking places that go along with that. And so I think that those need to be reviewed before any decisions are made as well. I'm going to just read what I've got here. As other homeowners have mentioned, this is our 5th time before this committee to plead our case regarding Jared Cameron's zoning preferences. The last zoning request 2 years ago, which was not during COVID, to R18 single-family housing was granted. today was the first time I heard that there were ever any plans to have just a house in the back and some type of business in the front. It was always zoned 2 years ago for 2 homes on a flag lot. We finally thought Mr. Cameron would be moving forward with his plan to build 2 homes on his flag zone property lot. After 4 different zoning requests and owning his property for approximately 10 years, Mr. Cameron finally met with UDOT to gain official access to his property. It is my understanding that when Mr. Cameron met with UDOT, he was informed that he would need to change the curb and gutter to the property and move one of the large utility poles on his narrow property. Once he learned of the additional expense of the two homes with moving that large utility pole, he was graciously zoned were no longer feasible for him. It was my understanding that that's when he came back to the city to come and find a way to make the property more profitable for him. We're all meeting again because, as I understand from the Murray Zoning Department, Mr. Cameron would like to build an independent living facility on his flag lot. I highly suspect that Mr. Cameron has not put any thought into what an independent living facility entails.
That's your time.
I really would like to just go through a couple of these things because I think it's important for you guys to think about this.
Well, we've given everyone the same amount of time.
May I take somebody else's time? Would that be all right? Thank you.
That's not really how it works. But yes, you can finish your statement.
Okay,
but
it's very,
we
it won't
we let
take
you know
long.
at the beginning how much time you had. so,
Right, and
yeah.
I apologize, I timed this, but there were a few things that have come up that have surprised me within this whole presentation. Independent means the residents have an automobile that will need covered parking spaces. Parking must also be available for visitors, facility workers, and home health care vehicles. Independent residents have expectations of a dining room and gathering spaces. Since this becomes a high-traffic business, will UDOT require both utility poles be moved? Emergency vehicles need access to turn around on the property, most likely a large T. If it is zoned into general office, Mr. Cameron will need to build a 6 to 8 foot wall the entire length of the property line on the north side. Mr. Cameron's flag lot is 1.4 acres. I believe that, and I guess today we learned it was 1.35. I believe that when Mr. Cameron puts a sketch pencil and calculator into this project, it too will no longer be feasible for him. In addition, the lot is on 9th East, across the street from Holly Lane and the Autism Center and our entrance. I can't imagine trying to navigate the traffic and the accidents that will occur. I believe we've all seen multiple traffic accidents a few blocks away on Vine Street and 900 East intersection with a traffic light. I implore the City Council of Murray City to decline Mr. Cameron's request until at the bare minimum he comes to this body with an actual plan with thought and research as to how it can be done safely before any zoning changes occur. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank all of you for your time and what you do to help us in the community, and we appreciate that very much in your time here tonight in listening to us. I just want to emphasize the things that you've heard here tonight, all of our objections, the problems and the things that we occur there. If Mr. Cameron is permitted to put up his office building or whatever structure he intends to do, it will destroy our lane. The only way that you can relate to that is if you're willing to come and take a little stroll down that beautiful lane that is unique and beautiful and charming and one of a kind. You will never see anything like that anywhere. When my husband and I were first looking for a place to build a lot, we were first introduced to the lane, and from that moment on, it was a get-go. We decided that this was the place. The lane, the charm, the beauty of it, it is a one-of-a-kind. And for us to see anything destroy that, and it will literally destroy the beauty of that beautiful lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a public comment?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Procedural question, that's all it is. So the applicants have unlimited time, but the people that have comments have 3 minutes?
Yes.
Interesting.
Were there any online comments?
No, there were not.
Okay. Then I will close the public comment period. If we could maybe address some of the questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to address the procedure. So the way that a rezone goes in Murray City is that staff does an analysis and then makes a recommendation to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has the discretion with a rezone to either make a positive or negative recommendation to the City Council based on their discretion. And then the City Council will receive a presentation from staff as well, and they also have discretion to either follow the Planning Commission's recommendation or go or vote the opposite way as well.
Mr. Rogers, can we add to that description, which I feel like maybe we should do more often in these meetings, to the task of this body, meaning, and in that description, can we include that it's not our personal opinion? If we like something or don't like something, we're here to say if it fits the ordinances or the codes or the land use, right?
So let me do some clarification on that. So when it comes to legislative items and making recommendations to the city council, you do have a lot more leeway. You don't have to meet there is nothing in the code that says how you can vote for a legislative item. You have a lot more leeway there.
Well, that's
and
true,
it-
that's
and-
true to the extent that if we're stating things that are supported by land use, if I say I don't like you as an applicant or something, and
Correct,
you deny
yeah.
it, then they could sue and come back and say there was nothing in your code that supports your denial, and they could win.
Right, yeah, but so sorry, there was just I was hearing it differently. I was hearing based on the zoning requirements, right? But what you're really looking at is, does the proposed zone fit within the character of the neighborhood that's going into it? That's what you're really looking at. Does it fit the character of the area? Is it going to, will that zone have a substantial impact on the neighborhood, the roads, things like that? You're able to take those into consideration. You're also more, you are more inclined to, as opposed, and that would come out wrong. I'm not gonna say that. And so, yeah, that's kind of more along those lines. When we're doing these legislative changes, those are much more in your wheelhouse.
I always wish we would define that a little bit better, because I feel like my fellow residents can make stronger arguments in opposition if they knew what the arguments should be. Because sometimes I can say, I think this is so cute or quaint and love it, but I'm also thinking, darn it, it fits the ordinance.
Well, again, that would be project-based. When it comes to a project, yes, you are bound by what the city ordinances say. When it is legislative, you are not bound by what the ordinance says, because there is no ordinance per se. You
Well,
are
as long as I
looking at
can-
the character, and whether this zone fits in the area.
That's right, as long as I can make an argument whether it does or doesn't fit within the area.
Correct.
And so,
Zach, can you also explain the process of why something would get rezoned before having a project or site plans or what the developer wants to do with it, why those two?
Yeah.
Or,
So I-
sorry,
no, I
David-
just,
David can
sometimes I
explain that
have
also.
sometimes I have a
I'm sorry.
a tendency
Could
to just
staff-
come in.
Could
Yeah.
staff explain?
Yeah.
The process.
He's fine with me explaining it. So, yeah, it has been the approach of Murray City, the city council, the planning commission, that potential projects do not come before the body during a change in zoning. The body is supposed to review the entirety of the zone and every every possible permitted or conditional use within that. The city has been burned in the past by somebody bringing in something, and then the zone gets changed, and then market conditions change, or something changes, they sell the property, whatever, and it becomes something completely different than what was presented to both bodies. And so, in that vein, the city has opted to not allow for potential projects to be there, because we do realize things can change. So it's in the body's best interest to look at the zone writ large as opposed to just a specific project.
So to be clear, then, essentially notwithstanding what we've heard about potentially what might occur with the land, we're not really to take that into account. It's just whether or not this proposed zoning change would be appropriate for this area.
100% correct.
I think just to add that, I think that as a commission member, that's very important, because we see project after project after project, and a lot of them never happen. And so when we make a change, like if we made one tonight, or don't make one tonight, whatever the zoning is on this property, that could be, Mr. Cameron could leave, and he could get hit by a car, heaven forbid, and then someone else could own that property. And his plan, even though he had full intent of doing it, may change. Or, like staff mentioned, maybe they can't make a pencil. And so they can build anything that's allowed on the zone for whatever the zone is. I mean, there are building permits and there's processes, and if he, builds an assisted living, he's gonna have to fulfill all those requirements. And that's a process that he will go through. But what we need to consider is, what are all the potentials that he can do with this zone change?
Or anyone else, right?
Or anyone
Because
else.
if this gets rezoned and he sells the property, and someone else could come in and make a totally different plan. And that is why we don't consider a project when we're looking at the zoning. We're not in a public comment period. So I also just want to let you know that, when we look at the recommendations that you saw, the way it reads is that staff recommends that the planning commission forward a recommendation of approval. So nothing has been decided. None of us have made our minds. We've read the staff report. We've read the evidence that they've presented to us about why they are recommending approval, but that doesn't mean that our minds are made up.
We are
So
not staff, just to clarify.
We are not
We're
staff.
not staff. They're staff, so.
they are making a recommendation, and we are going to make up our minds as part of your public comments and part of this discussion. So saying that we've already approved it and that our minds are already made up is not true. The other thing I wanted to address from staff is, one of the suggestions was like, why can't we just have the city purchase it, or have it become part of Wheeler Farm, or why can't there be a different solution than what is being proposed?
So, the short answer is that that's not what Mr. Cameron has come forward with. The city can do eminent domain. The city has not thus far ever done eminent domain, as far as we can tell. And we don't take people's property from them.
Right,
do
because
anything
the
with.
property owner has rights.
Yeah, the property owner does have rights.
So-
It's in the Constitution of the U.S. That we have due process under the law, and substantial property rights. It's a fundamental thing in the country.
But like you said, a whole nother discussion, we could discuss purchasing, and there's a process for that, but the process tonight is the
Correct.
property owner wants to do right now.
Correct, yes.
And the property's not for sale, so.
We don't know.
No, nobody could, people
Correct.
couldn't just go and say, Wheeler Farm, buy this property, right? It's
Sure.
it's not necessarily for sale. The last thing I wanted to just kind of address is, how many times can someone ask for a rezone on a property?
So unless it is a denied, a request is denied by the city council, which then there is a 1-year time frame if it is denied by the city council, they could come in every single day and apply for a new zone every time. And if they want to pay the application fee every time, obviously. But then we as a public body we do have to take those and process them just like any other application that we would do. So, I mean, that's obviously a little crazy to assume somebody would come in and apply every single day. But we don't have a limit on how often somebody can apply unless it's denied and then it's 1 year.
I'm assuming the residents will bring that up, though, not because is there a limit, there should be a limit, or more so they're trying to point out, I'm assuming, trying to point out that we don't know what's going to be built there, and they keep changing the plan, which we are aware of. We're looking at the zoning, not the project, because there hasn't been a project presented. Traffic, there's a lot of questions about traffic.
9th East is a busy road. It's an arterial. It is built and maintained that way. That's really all you can really say about 9th East. It is a state run. Oh, David wants to say something.
Sorry, there was a question brought up about how certain uses have different parking requirements than other uses do in their zones. And as part of the site plan approval, for example, there was one that went through that was a daycare. A daycare has different parking requirements than something else in the zone was. And so when staff reviews the site plan, which everything in the general office zone is required to come to Planning Commission for final approval. That's not a staff level approval, so anything made in the GO would come to the Planning Commission. But as part of the site plan review, staff would take into account what the parking differences are for one use compared to another use if it's spelled out in the code. And so that would be part of the site plan review.
And sightlines, do they change per project? Meaning with driveways, there's usually, what's it called at the corner? Line of sight, triangle that's required.
The site triangle. So those are engineering standards. And so that, when we do a site plan review, we route the project to all of the different departments in the city. So engineering looks at it, fire looks at it, police looks at it, to make sure that everything is up to the city code requirements under their purview.
So in theory, that line of sight might improve with the project. There might be restrictions on how close to driveways people could park. I don't know what projects are going to happen, but.
Correct.
That's kind of one of my questions, I think, too, is if this were developed, it might actually improve the line of sight or the parking near that
When a
sorry.
site,
private lane.
when a site plan
We're not-
review comes in, it does have to meet all applicable city standards. So that would include engineering standards, or planning standards, and would have to be developed under the current standards of the code at the time.
I've got to,
I think we're
please
still,
indulge this, it's kind of a tangential question, but you said that, what are the restrictions on, no new residences can be built off of a private lane, is that correct?
Yeah, that was, I believe, it was in the early 2010s, or maybe even a little bit sooner, that the city was getting a lot of requests from people that lived off private lanes to take their street at a substandard level that the Murray City allows for our improvements. So typically, we require a 49-foot right-of-way, right, 26 feet of asphalt, sidewalk, curb and gutter, all that fun stuff. And there were a lot of requests coming in. And so the city council decided that, yeah, no more subdivisions along private roads to prohibit those requests from coming in.
So does that include if the residents that own that private lane agree that they can build off of it?
Correct.
I'd like to ask more questions along that, so that the man prior to Mr. Jared, that owned this property, developed this neighborhood. So when he owned the property and developed the neighborhood, he, at that point, could have built on this piece of property and incorporated it into the neighborhood. At what point was he no longer allowed to use that street, when he sold it to someone else?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Well, I guess the reason for asking is because maybe originally they had access to that, and since then, by not building and not progressing, they've lost access to the private road?
Honestly, I have no idea, to be honest with you. And I will inform you guys is that while the other agenda items were going, I was looking back through some of the other things, at some of the other requests. And I haven't found anything that there was ever access on there.
I know it seems irrelevant, I'm just asking because the case seems to be building as, woe is me, I can't build, and so I'm trying to decide how much weight to give that. That's why I'm
Sure.
asking when the access changed.
Yeah,
So-
I think it was either, and I apologize, trying to keep all the, what year changes or zones went in. I believe it was either 2007 or 2011. Those were when big changes happened. So it was one of those 2 years.
And I appreciate that and understand that this is just for reference again. Was the comment made by, submitted by Kevin and Becky Potts, are you aware if the assertions they made are on the zoning are correct?
Oh, we have to ask the
Audience,
city.
we ask, please don't call out.
I don't know what it says.
We just have to ask impartial.
Staff has not gone back and checked if those dates correlated. Staff just received the comment and passed it on to the planning commission.
I think it's important to understand why we keep telling you guys to not speak. And it's not because we don't like you. It's because this is a public meeting and all of the comments made in this room have to be on the public record. And so they have to be done in a certain way. And that's why we have a public comment period. That's why it's done at a microphone. And that's why, if we're saying, please, don't yell out from the audience, that's the reason why. Not because we don't care what you are here for or say.
Exactly. And can we discuss, are we at a point where we can discuss the zoning a little bit? What I'm thinking is, it's a little disappointing to me to go geo here. I feel like across the street, we've got RNB, and that zoning is intentional to be a buffer between the residents and the busy road of 900 East. And the park and Wheeler Farm. And I understand that city planning, it would be great to have a little bit commercial along that road because it is a commercial type road and then residential. And to me, R&B seems to make more sense there. Geo seems big. Can we talk about it?
Yeah, so I tend to agree with Lisa. The question I had is, I think she just explained it, but why does the city feel like the proposed zone fits the character of this neighborhood? Even though it's I think what we're saying, the city is saying is that it's across the street from office, but that whole area is home. It seems like that fits better in that area, not the GO.
Yeah, so, kind of like I had mentioned, and we can't, you as a public body don't discuss a project, right? Me as staff, I can talk to Jared Cameron about what, or the applicant, about what their intention is. And after reviewing kind of what his intention was for the property, I felt this was the best zone to pursue to do that. And stated that we would support it. But again, that's that's only because I know what the project is and what he wants to do.
But the question, part of the question they're asking is how does that affect the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood? And as well as the general plan for this area?
Sure, and again, without,
Well,
it's difficult. It's difficult to say. In my opinion, if doing a independent living facility is what he intends to do, then that would fit pretty well in this area, I believe. I don't have a specific zone that only allows
and that won't fit in an R&B.
an R&B. It would be, I believe it does, it would be allowed as well. He was, the applicant was concerned with the design requirements for that zone.
The design requirements are what we would like about the zone.
Exactly. And I understand that, but and he was concerned because the RMB was denied in the past in 2013. And so that was part of the reasoning for going for the GO. He did, when he was talking to us, ask for a higher zoning district, and I said staff wouldn't support that. We just wouldn't. And
Or what, I'm sorry?
a higher density zoning district. We wouldn't support it at that time. But with if I had a zone that just permitted just senior living or, senior living or independent care facilities, we would have pursued that. But this was the kind of the direction I went. Again, that's just with what he had presented, not necessarily, and again, that's probably something I probably should have thought about a little bit more, because you're right, I should have looked at it. And again, I apologize, but please don't, we have people, this lady.
Ma'am.
We have somebody that's going to be listening to this and taking recordings of them for the minutes, and we can't have public outcry.
And I think we're intelligent adults and we realize that. We've said that a couple times in the meeting. So I agree, it's okay. The project is not what drives the zone. We've said that.
And that's what I'm
Well-
that's what I have to try to give context. So,
Project
again,
doesn't drive zoning changes.
you as the body have to decide whether that's appropriate. Not necessarily the use, but the zone. I
so the-
know a little bit differently.
The project doesn't drive our decision here.
Correct.
But the zone is driving it, and we're saying that it should be GO.
There's,
And
They're saying it.
I'm sorry.
asking.
Yeah,
You're saying that it should
staff
be
is
GO.
recommending the GO.
But I think we're saying, at least I am, and maybe Lisa, that GO doesn't fit the character.
Okay, and that's entirely, that's why we're here, right?
Right,
Is
right. And
to see if
I
it,
just wanted to make that clear.
for sure. No, and I
Well,
completely
I
understand
think it's
that.
fair to say, especially in light of some of the comments that were made too, that just simply going back to I guess an R18 with the shape and access to this property is probably not realistic either, given all of the comments about the traffic and everything on there. Nobody's going to want to live on that frontal space.
Well, they want to live there. They want to live there. You put 3 or 4 houses in, maybe the house on 900 East
How do you put 3 or 4
wouldn't.
houses on there? You can't, the only possible
You-
thing
you-
I can see you could do is with
You couldn't
one
get 3 or 4
flag
houses.
lot, right?
Yeah,
Two
because,
and
I mean,
flag lot?
looking at the width of it, you take approximately 50 feet away from it, plus a cul-de-sac at the end, a 100-foot diameter cul-de-sac at the end.
You know,
If you tried to put more than one home on it, you mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you wanted to do more than one dwelling, outside of a flag lot, you could do one home in a flag lot. We've found out that would work. But anything more than
But
that,
you can't do something like a flag lot with more than one home.
No.
A flag lot is just one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think the only way, at least the way I'm seeing this, only way to make homes work there is to use the private lane. Otherwise, you can't, well, we can't because that's not wanted, but, putting the road on the other side, it just eats into the space.
Well, and I think it's fair to say, and I think all the commissioners know this, is property owners have some rights to develop and use their property,
Yeah, but
and that's a primary consideration with what we're talking about, too.
But I feel like you're thinking if this doesn't go GO, he can't use his property, and he could go RNB and use his property, he could put 2 houses on a flag lot on his property, he could sell it to Wheeler Farm, he could sell it to the 7 properties that wanted to maintain a lane, 7 owners who wanted to maintain into a lane. I mean, there's options, maybe not as the option he wants.
And I think that's what
Well,
I was.
But I don't think we can plan it for him and tell him what to do with his property. That's why he has some property rights, at least within the zoning.
It definitely has property rights, but it's our job to make sure his use fits in the view of the city.
Well, and I agree, and maybe I'm probably saying things on both sides a little bit here.
It's okay, we're trying to work it
I
out.
want him to be able to develop this property.
Yeah.
And if you read the amendments here, we're not telling him how to develop his property, nor are we telling him what he can't do with his property. We had very specific amendments of what we are asked to do here, and that is to change the future land use.
Well,
Not to decide what he's gonna do, or even speculate what he's gonna
Well,
do,
exactly.
because the land
But the
uses,
zoning still
that are
restricts that.
identified here tell you what can be done on those land uses.
There are restrictions, and there should be.
But we're not here to decide what those restrictions are. We're here
Well,
to
yes,
decide.
we are. We're here to, right now, this question is it gonna be residential or is it going to be general office?
That's right.
So we are deciding
No,
what those
we're-
restrictions.
No,
is.
he can
Is
develop
either
it,
one or
whatever
the
is
other?
allowed even in
That's
the
right.
R18.
I mean, I both think.
We're
Yeah,
not,
I
we're not
think-
deciding.
I
what
think
he's
though
doing.
what he's saying is if we forward a recommendation to change this to GO, we are effectively telling him what he can and can't do with his property. He cannot build certain things on a GO.
If we deny the recommendation to GO.
So
we're
what
also
we're
telling
doing
him
is
what
telling him
Well,
he can and
I-
can't
what
do
he
with his
can do with his property,
Well-
and if we approve the GO, we're telling him he can do
I think both,
what he requested he wants to do.
both arguments are
If we-
right.
we vote no, then we're telling him what he
Right.
can't or
Both
can't
arguments
do.
are right. We are saying what you can and can't do with your land. That's our job. I think one of our commissioners is worried about saying no and then leaving someone with a piece of land that's not useful, and I don't think that's the case here. Because we wouldn't want to tell someone no, and then they have absolutely no options with their piece of land. That would worry me as well, because that's not fair to a landowner. But I don't think that's the case tonight.
Yeah, but that's speculation too.
Yeah,
To be
agreed.
fair, we don't know what the future economics of any type of project would lead to, right? You know, we gotta balance the equities between, private landowners being able to use their own private property, you know, in an appropriate manner that doesn't, conflict with maybe the greater good of the community or the surrounding area, and we just balance, and that's what we're talking about, balancing that, I think.
I really got to say, I was really frustrated, actually, when I saw this application. I was on the commission when he applied for RNB, and it was denied because we felt like it went too deep back into those houses. It wasn't acting as a buffer. So to then come and ask for a general office, I understand that it's because he has a project in mind, but I mean, I really feel like this is not in line with the surrounding zones, that redesignating this is not part of what we had future land use for this property. And, I mean, he has options, even as he could split the property and make the front part RNB and make the back part something else. You know, like him asking for GO, he can ask for whatever he wants, right? But in my opinion, this is a case of spot zoning. And I do not see how GO can be supported on this piece of property with everything else that's around it. I mean, I honestly feel like it's shocking to get denied RNB and to come back and ask for a general office. I understand that he has a project in mind, and that's how you get to that project. I also think even if it was an assisted living facility, this isn't the right place for that. So, I mean, you know, that's just my opinion, but I don't know how we get to GO.
Was that RNB denied by the planning commission or by the city council?
It was denied by the planning commission. It didn't even go to the city council.
Actually, I'll clarify,
Oh.
it did, it went to both and was denied both. The planning
Forward a
commission,
recommendation of denial.
so regardless of how you guys make a recommendation, they can pursue to the city council. So if
applicant
you-
still has the
yeah,
opportunity to
it
take-
just informs the city council on what your recommendation is as the land use authority. So if you make a recommendation of denial, if the applicant decides, they can still go forward and and still have their due process, right? And go to the city council, who is the final decision maker. And, so yeah, in 2013, that's what I was looking up, is when that was, which was 11 years ago. I wasn't here, so I didn't know, I wasn't here for it. So, yeah, I found the minutes for both, for that, and yeah, I was denied at both.
And I don't think that it is violating the property owner's rights. If he bought a parcel that is hard to develop and he's gonna run into some issues, I mean, that is the nature of it. He can ask for different zones, he can try and do different things, but that's no denial of his rights of how he wants to use this property if it's.
Yeah, I agree. I think, just to put it, one more time, I guess succinctly, I don't think it fits with the character of the area, and there's other options. I don't think that's denying anybody's rights.
And if we rezone as general office, it could be anything in general office, right? Assisted living would probably be best case scenario, but say he can't make it pencil, he sells the property, someone else could come build anything else in general office. They might not be interested in assisted living. I don't see how we get from R18 to GO in this specific spot.
And let me make a clarification also, I apologize. And this isn't meaning to sway in either direction at all, but I was looking through the RNB and I'm surprised, actually. Senior living facilities are not a conditional or permitted use in the RNB zone. So that's probably why I didn't. Really? That's probably
And that's
why
what I
didn't
kind of said
recommend
in the pre-meeting,
Yeah.
that if it's a use not allowed in the RMB, it seems confusing that we would go to the GO for.
Where we can't consider a project, even when we think is appropriate then, because it opens it up too much, it sounds like the zoning has too big a jumps from one requirement zone to the next.
I think that's how some people on the commission are feeling. I don't know if that's a general statement.
So just from the staff's perspective, yeah, if a property owner comes to us and says, we'd like to do this, then we look and see, well, how is that feasible? And we would recommend them go the direction that would make it most feasible. So that would be how we would get to this point.
Is there any further discussion, or I'll entertain a motion?
Madam Chairman, I'll make forward a recommendation of denial to the city council for the requested amendment to the future land use map, redesignating the properties located at 6231 South, 900 East from low-density residential to office.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Sorry, staff just wants to say that it is 6271, and that was an
Oh,
error
yeah,
on
they
my part.
corrected that address for us.
But on the record, the motion has.
6731.
6271.
71, okay. And I'll repeat that motion. So I have a motion from Commissioner Hacker.
6271.
Yeah, a second from Commissioner Richards to forward a recommendation of denial to the city council for the requested amendments to the future land use map, redesignating the properties located at 6271 South, 900 East from low-density residential to office. Is that right? Okay. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I think the commissioners have pointed out the issue, and that is, when the RNB was put in on the west side of 900 East, it was put there for a significant purpose, and that was to protect the residential from the large buildings that could be built on 900 East. And I think that's the same issue here on the west side, or on the east side of 900 East.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for.
I'm sorry, I want to say I'm sympathetic with the landowner here on being able to try and develop this property in some way, but I really think going to the general office without us being able to consider any more information than that is a step too far for this particular address.
Mr. Richards, did you have?
I just want to clarify, because this is one of those motions where you're recommending a denial. So yes means no, just so we understand, there's no confusion there, right? So if you vote yes, you're agreeing with the recommendation of denying.
Right.
So just make sure everybody, we're on.
Thank you. Make sure we got our ducks in a row. Okay, we'll call for a vote.
Commissioner Milkovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Richards. Yes means no.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker.
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson.
Yes.
Commissioner Haristo.
Yes.
Chair Patterson.
Yes. So motion is approved to forward recommendation of denial. So our next request to, request to amend the Murray City zoning map. Is there discussion or a motion on that?
Chair, I'll make a motion that we forward a recommendation of denial to the city council for the requested amendment to the zoning map designation of the property located at 6271 South 900 East from R18, single-family low-density residential, to GO General Office as described in the staff report.
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Pearson and a second by Commissioner Milkovich to forward a recommendation of denial to the city council for the requested amendment to the zoning map designation of the properties located at 6271 South, 900 East from R18 low-density single-family to GO General Office as described in the staff report. Is there any discussion on that motion?
May I just say one thing as staff?
Did I?
No, you did everything perfectly.
okay.
I just wanted to commend the commission, and I want to make sure that the residents out here know this has been a very lively discussion and has been well thought out. And in all honesty, it could have gone both ways. And I want you to understand that they do not make their decisions prior to hearing all the evidence and having this discussion like they just did up here. So I just want to make sure that, and I want to commend all of you, that I think that was one of the best discussions I've heard in many years. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, let's call for a vote.
And can I just say, I want to, thank you for that, and also the state, it's hard for us. We want to respect everyone's rights. We're residents too. So.
Okay, we can take a vote.
Okay, perfect. Commissioner Haristo.
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson.
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Richards.
Yes.
Commissioner Milkovich.
Yes.
Chair Patterson.
Yes. So motion to deny or forward a recommendation of denial is approved. So thank you for being here. We always are grateful when the public participates and can witness the action of their city planning commission. Okay,
I would like to say something before any, you can't speak, no, it's not a thank you to us, believe me, it's not a thank you to us. I would recommend that the neighborhood over there get together with the applicant here and figure out what to do with that property. It'll be developed, it'll guarantee you, it'll be developed. So, and until that happens, I think all parties are gonna be disappointed.
yeah.
No,
Sorry,
I think we're finished, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank
we
you for
are
participating.
moving on to agenda item number 8 and 9, general plan and zone map amendments for Lotus Development. I see the applicant here. So first we can have our staff report.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Patterson, or Chair Patterson. This is a request for future land use map and a zoning map amendment for 825 to 865 East, 4800 South. This is a change from the previous application that was heard on September 5th. Originally, it included this R18 single-family low-density piece. After the commission's recommendation and going back and speaking more with the public, with neighbors of the property, they had put in an amended request to remove that. And instead of just moving it forward to the planning commission, I think we could have moved it to the city council by omitting that. We wanted to bring it back down to the planning commission so that you guys also have a review of this change as well. It is in the GO zone, so this allows for general office. You guys are probably beat over the head about what's allowed in the general office at this point. And the request is to change that to RM25, which is residential multifamily high density. The 2017 general plan outlines this as an office future land use, and the request is to amend that over to high density residential. So the office designation allows for a wide range of office uses and is generally for individual buildings or small clusters that are scaled similar to adjacent residential areas. Higher density residential allows for a mix of housing types, primarily multi-dwelling structures, but at a denser scale than other residential neighborhoods. So just a review of the two different zoning districts. The GO, residential density, it's not allowed except for retirement facilities. And RM25 allows 8,000 square feet per lot for a single-family dwelling, or up to 22 dwelling units per acre. The height in the GO is 30 feet within 100 feet of residential zone. RM25 is up to 40 feet max as approved by the Planning Commission. Front yard setback is 20 in the GO. Rear yard is none unless it's abutting residential. Side yard setback is 10 feet, corner 20 feet. Parking required is typically 4 to 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. RM25 is 25 and 25 for the front and rear yard setbacks. Side yard is a minimum of 8 and for a total of 20. Corner yard setback is 20 feet and then 2.5 off-street spaces per unit. So we sent out 87 notices of the public hearing for the requested amendments to the future land use map. As of the making of this, I had not received any comments. I've received comments after. Findings, general plan provides for flexibility in its implementation and execution of the goals and policies based on the individual circumstances, provides direction to the city and its initiatives, and an application to amend the general plan will meet important goals of those initiatives. We've reviewed the GO to RM25 and considered those based on the characteristics of the site and surrounding area, and feel that the change can be managed within the parameters of the RM25 zone. So with that, we are recommending the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for both the general plan amendment and the zone map amendment. And I'm happy to take questions.
I'm sorry. You said this came in September. I think that was the meeting that I wasn't here.
September 5th, I think.
So, I guess they're dividing part of this land off then and not developing it?
So, it is currently divided off. You can see the zoning here. So the original request included this slice, this 1 acre slice
Okay.
of R18 zoning, and this slice. So it was 2 parcels.
And that first portion has nothing on it right now?
It has one single family dwelling.
One single family
Yeah,
dwelling,
which is
just
like
there at the
right-
front of the property?
Yep, right there at the front. You can see the house.
Any other questions? Oh.
Goodness gracious.
This is probably not strictly relevant, maybe it's, again, it's tangential a little bit, but doesn't that kind of create another property that has the same problem as the one we just looked at? Where it's gonna have a narrow frontage and a big,
So
deep
Lotus
lot?
still owns both of them, and they can utilize some of that space they could in theory use that as kind of an open space for the property next door, without having to do anything different, because it's just, they would be sharing those things. They're just not changing the zoning, which would thus then reduce the allowed, amount of dwellings that would be able to be built on there. And maintaining the single family home in the area as well.
So that chunk right now it's R18?
Correct. And again, they couldn't further subdivide it either, for the same reasons, unless it's a flag lot, which they might be able
I'm
to
not
do,
even
but I don't
sure
know.
it's wide enough for that, is it?
I don't know if it is, to be honest with you.
It has a
I have-
significant,
There is a
It
significant.
has some
Elevation
topography
change.
issues as well.
Okay, well, was my next question, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, if we could have the applicant come forward.
Hello again.
Hello. Just name and addresses for the record.
My name is Adam Hughes, and our business address is 34 South 600 East Salt Lake City.
My name's Jake Bird. I'm with Lotus, 34 South, 600 East, Salt Lake City.
Great. What information would you like to give the commission about your request?
So we previously appeared before the Planning Commission on September 5th requesting RM25 across those 2 properties. The first property being the 2.93 acre parcel, the site of the business park, and the other being a 1 acre parcel zoned R18. The concerns that were raised by this body was that the density was too high, and some concerns raised by the neighbors were in preserving the environment, the traffic impact, and power infrastructure. Many on this body had indicated that they would be supportive of a rezone request if it were at a lower density of RM15. With this revised application, we are proposing a solution that addresses each of the issues raised by this body and by many of the neighbors. So first, we'd like to address the traffic concerns that were raised by the neighbors. We commissioned a traffic study from Reeve and Associates, an engineering firm. While the full traffic study will be completed within the next week, which we can share with the city and the neighbors. When completed, we have with us a traffic generation letter from Reeve that analyzes the traffic by land use and compares the traffic generation from the existing office buildings to the traffic that will be generated by the townhome redevelopment. Their analysis shows that lower traffic would be experienced from a townhome redevelopment, by about half. We've got copies of that available as well. I'm not sure if you have received copies of that. Okay. Second, we'd like to address the power infrastructure concern regarding energy consumption that one of the neighbors raised, because they've experienced blackouts. The current office buildings are quite old and inefficient. The average energy usage for a standard office building is about 17 kilowatt hours per square foot per year, and given the inefficiency of the existing buildings, they are consuming more than average. At 46,088 square feet, using the average consumption, the current office space consumes around 783,496 kilowatt hours per year. In contrast, the townhomes we're proposing, with an average size of 1,600 square feet, would be built to current energy standards, consuming approximately 5 kilowatts per kilowatt hours per square foot annually. This would total 512,000 kilowatt hours per year, which is significantly less than the current office complex. In addition, since the meeting on September 5th, Jake Bird here visited with many of the neighbors directly adjacent to the property at the home of Mr. Rob Benedict. If you recall, Mr. Benedict had appeared here to voice his concern for the project and having high-density residential approved next to his home at the R18. We offered a compromise to Mr. Benedict and his neighbors in attendance that in exchange for removing the R18 property from the application for a rezone, that they would support the RM25 rezone on the GO property. This was received favorably by all of the neighbors in attendance. In terms of the R18 property, it is virtually impossible to subdivide it under the existing R18 zoning. A subdivision would require a 49-foot right-of-way off of 4800 through the property. With setback requirements, this would result in insufficient lot sizes to accommodate 8,000 square foot lots, which we've confirmed with Mr. Smallwood. So by removing the R18 property from the rezone, it virtually guarantees that the property will not be subdivided, eliminating the opportunity for redevelopment on the site and satisfying the concerns of the neighbors who are concerned about preserving the environment on the R18 site. So what you have before you is a rezone for the GO property comprised of 2.93 acres. Under the rezone, we would only be able to achieve 22 units an acre on the property, as we would not qualify for any of the bonus density requirements that permit higher density. So at 22 units an acre on 2.93 acres, we are at a total of 64 units. Taking into consideration the withdrawal of the 1 acre R18 property from the application, which, as I've mentioned above, is functionally indivisible. What we are proposing results in a blended density of 64 units across 4 acres. This yields a density per acre of only 16. This resulting density is less than Miller Estates, which is located to the southeast of the site and has 294 units on 15 acres, resulting in a density of 20 units an acre. While what we're proposing is only one more unit than the RM15 zone that this body has indicated they would support and recommend to City Council, we feel like this is a good compromise and results in a project that is compatible with surrounding land uses and that we have adequately addressed the concerns of the neighbors.
Great. Any questions for the applicant?
What was your last comment there about, I thought you said something about RM15?
So one of the comments from some members of the body last time we presented in September was that if we had come forward with an RM15 request, that it would have been looked upon more favorably than the RM25. RM15 on those 4 acres, essentially. So that's what we're referring to.
On the 4 acres, including the piece that you're
Including the R18.
But I think to further, you said that you would be getting 16 units per acre, right?
If you look at the entire 4 acres, if we're only doing 64 on 3, that's the same as 16 acres on 4.
But I
If that
don't know
makes
how
sense.
we consider that if you're not including that other parcel as part of the rezone.
So
He's,
because they own both pieces of property, so yeah, it wouldn't
understand
be, I guess that would be at the project level, so you really should be just considering just the,
When you're.
no, I think I get what you're
I
saying.
understand what you're saying, Zach, and I understand the reasons, but again, we can only look at it based on this parcel and
Correct.
what they want to do for that zoning.
Correct.
Not that they might include that other 1 point whatever acres it is.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like, for clarification, can you go back to the map? So in the initial proposal, this strip over here, whoa, whoa, wow, maybe that yellow.
Oh, you want the yellow one? Okay, you want
Yeah.
the zoning.
So in the original proposal, this yellow strip here was part of it, but they're saying they're not going to develop it, but today it is part of the rezoning, or no, it is not part of the
It
rezoning?
is not part of the rezoning,
So
but
this
they
is-
already own both
They
parcels.
own both, this will stay R18, this is in question, this will stay R18, this is in question. whether
That's
they're
the one
changing
that you're reviewing today.
So
Yes.
all we're discussing is the 3 point, so
Right.
2.93 acres.
Yeah, 2.9.
So it's a legitimate question to ask, why did you not include this, that portion again at a different zoning density?
Like an RM20 or something, or?
Well, an RM15 or an RM20 or something?
Because the main concern of the neighbors is having any development along that R18. And what we had originally proposed was with RM25, moving the density over into the GO. So while we would get the rezone, we would do a density transfer essentially over to the GO. Now, that's not considered by this body because you don't look at it at the project level, only at the rezone. But for us to address the
But you're
concerns of the
within a
neighbors
stone's
and,
throw
and
of
receive
that.
their support, that's why we pulled the R18, was to address their concerns and maintain that property in the R18 zone.
As I said before, and I'll say again later, I'm in a huge quagmire, and I'll explain in more details later, but part of it also, I'm always uncomfortable when the developer tells me what the neighbors think. I just don't, I like you guys, I like your project, and I'll talk more about that later, but I think we should take the neighbor's opinion and your opinion and not mix the two, because I don't know what the neighbors think, they're not here. I don't know. Although I respect you guys, but
So can
Well, then I'm looking at what's right across the street, is that other apartment complex. So I'm not sure the neighbors have a really, I think this kind of a development is an obvious choice for that property.
So
I think
I was
more,
gonna-
the question in my mind just still goes back to that density and why we're ending up with that high density in this
Yeah, so
situation.
I guess it'd be more appropriate to wait till the discussion point, but
Yeah, I mean, unless you have further questions for the
I
applicant.
have a comment along those lines as well, though.
Can you read the part that you said one more time? That last section that you said, if it had been on the 4 acres at RM25,
This
Right.
project would equal 16 units per
Yeah,
unit,
so
but it's not.
taking into consideration the fact that we withdrew the 1 acre of the R18 and looking at the entire 4 acres and what the density would be across 4 acres, which is how we look at it. I know that's not how you guys look at it, but that's how we look at it as a developer. We're only getting 16 units an acre across these 2 parcels.
across these 2 parcels, but you're only rezoning
I'm only rezoning the 1.
1 parcel.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
I guess I'm confused.
trying to, excuse me, trying to take what they're just saying there, looking at staff, had they continued with the 4 acres and zoned it as a lower density zone that would give them 64 units.
We're not looking at a project
Well,
tonight, we're looking
I
at
know,
zoning.
but we're looking at, no, but 64 units is how many units you can put on 2.93 acres at RM25.
Okay.
Okay, could I put 64 units on 4 acres at a different zoning density? Or a different zoning specification?
So I'm trying to think of a way to say this.
If it was RM15, it would be 45 max. If it was RM20, it would probably be 60 max, but then you have to put in road and,
Sure, I think I think what the applicant is trying to express is that the residents that have come out every single time, and this is on the record on the minutes, I feel comfortable in saying this, is that they do not like anything happening on that R18 piece. That was that was their comment every single time. And so that's why they took the approach they did, instead of bringing it back as a lower density for the whole thing.
but that's exactly what concerns me, because we're not looking at a project, we're looking at a zone change.
Correct, but the density still matters.
Yeah, so if they have a wonderful project, which I like, but then they can't develop it and someone else buys it and now it's a GO and they can do other things. We're not looking at a project, we're looking at a zone change.
And
Right.
I guess-
So I mean, either way, it would be, right. So, yeah.
You still haven't answered my question.
And really, I don't have an answer for you, because it's, what we're doing here tonight is looking at this application. Speculating on what could be or couldn't be, I don't
Well,
know.
but I'm looking for information that's trying to help me decide on this application.
Okay.
I guess also maybe the applicant could explain that you had applied for RM15
And it was denied
previously, right? And,
across all 4 acres.
right,
You had applied for RM?
yes. And
2 years
the
ago.
planning commission voted it forward, right?
Voted
Approved.
unanimously
And the
forward.
city council denied it. So they have gone through the process of applying for a lower density.
And it was denied by city council because of some of the concerns that the neighbors had raised
And-
directly
Right.
to city council. So we're here before this body trying to accomplish is we have an old functionally obsolete business park that is failing. We need to find a solution to redevelop it or it's going to become blighted. And you're going to see crime increase in this neighborhood. Just as a result, we think we've met the neighbors' needs and desires. We think this is a great compromise and accomplishes what's needed to be done. There are limitations in the way that your code is written, which is really a blunt tool. I wish there was more finesse that we could work through with other communities. We do development agreements where the project, the rezone application, the general land use amendment are all presented concurrently and all approved concurrently. The project's looked at, the rezone's looked at, the general land use amendment is all looked at within context. So you're at a disadvantage because you can only look at
One
the
thing.
zone.
I mean, I
You
understand.
can't look at the project.
I can understand the benefit at times with that, but I also understand why it's a disadvantage because we have people that present a project, then leave, and then something else is built there because we've approved the zone, so.
How often does that happen?
It's happened.
All the time.
Yeah.
Projects come here all the time that don't get built.
I just was curious.
So,
And
but
something
Zach-
else gets built on that same piece of property where another project was planned.
But some of the things you said are exactly my quagmire. I mean, I like your project. I think we should have a variety of housing. We should have variety of incomes of housing for different families. We should have some townhomes and condos. I just am frustrated with our city in this process because it should be smaller because to the east of it, the Kmart property, what happened with the Kmart property, that's the property, and for the reason we had the February moratorium put on that zoning, it came back with village mixed-use zoning. And then at the other end, we have Murray City, in which downtown area, in which we're going to have high density as well. So it makes sense to stop at some point and stop increasing the density along this road because it's a residential community. So I think residential there is perfect. But I just wish we had, as a city, participated with each other better and the RM10 or RM15 had been approved. Again, because we're looking at zoning, not a project. Because you guys are great and the products you produce are great. It's not against you, but we zone it large and it could be large.
I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to present the traffic generation letter, because the traffic generation letter shows a much lower intensity by redeveloping the site into townhomes.
I'm not,
Roughly about half of the traffic generation would be reduced.
I will say something that's strange to say, it needs explanation. The traffic isn't really my focus because I've learned to be on the commission, traffic never denies a project. All we do with traffic studies are to determine how we can adjust for the traffic we're creating. I've never seen a project deny on traffic. I sometimes wish that's how it worked, but I don't know.
Okay.
How long ago did you present this as the full 4 acres as RM15?
2 years ago.
June 2022.
Since that time, we've been working on transitioning all of the tenants to month-to-month leases because the building is at the end of its economic life. We've done public outreach to the neighborhood. We've met with city administration. We've met with city council members. This is the result of, close to 2 years' worth of work on trying to find a solution for this property. We've owned this since 2016.
Any other questions?
And I guess those things you just stated are why you think you're optimistic if it goes to the city council again that they will approve it?
Yes, because we feel like we've addressed all of the concerns of the neighbors.
And just because I feel like it's my job to think of both sides, I do think this is a good place to put townhomes or condos. It would be something I'd be interested in looking at purchasing. But I'm troubled by the suggestion that you couldn't put houses on it, because just further down the street, the Marsh Family Farm put 7 large-scale houses on that size of property,
And what was there before?
a field.
Okay, that's why. Because they bought raw land. We bought a business park.
So the expense of demolishing it adds up, so it wouldn't pencil out?
So we paid a multiple of cash flow on this property because it was a business that was producing cash flow. So our purchase price for this property was a multiple of cash flow. So
But if
it's
you
going to
buy-
be substantially higher than what a purchase price would be for raw land, because raw land doesn't
Right.
produce anything.
But it's higher because you can make money off the tenants.
Yeah, but I mean, this building is close to 50 years old.
So the
We
demolition is going
experienced-
to cost you more, is what you're saying.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that the reason why single family is supported on raw land is because the purchase price for raw land is much lower, right? So you don't need density in order for the economics to work. You can have wide open quarter, 1/3 acre lots if you're buying raw land. You don't need to pack density in there. When you buy a project like this, at a premium because it's producing cash flow, the economics require that you put density on it. It's land use economics.
Okay, thank you for that, to the applicant. I would like to open this application for public comment. Zach, I think we got some public comments, right? Okay.
Sorry, I'm just pulling it back up.
You're good.
So this one is from Cindy Paulson. Dear Murray Planning Commission, I wish I could address you tonight when you consider the renewed application of the Lotus Development Organization to rezone the property located at 825 to 865 East, 4800 South. I cannot attend because I am preparing to travel out of town for my son's wedding. I was invited to a meeting with Lotus and members of the community at 4 p.m. on October 10th, 2024, for a meeting to be held at 7 p.m. that same date. As you can imagine, I did not attend that meeting due to lack of notice. However, I am open to further discussion of proposed changes to the Lotus plan at a future date. I am even willing to help organize neighbors to attend. I am irked by the fact that the Lotus company got my personal email information from Murray City. That should not have happened, and I believe it was an invasion of privacy and a release of personally identifying information. I also feel that the Planning Commission staff misrepresented the facts as far as the condition of the property at the last Planning Commission hearing. There are no unhoused persons in the area, and the staffer who raised this homelessness concern was at a minimum disingenuous. I understand that the Lotus Development has represented they intend to make some compromises to better serve the community, reduce traffic, and maintain green space. I would like to know what data or studies the Planning Commission will have before them when they make this decision. My primary concerns are the following. 1, preservation of the mature trees and wildlife in the area. 2, traffic control, 4800 South and Van Winkle. 3, infrastructure. I don't think Murray City Power can support the current load on power. Sorry, it just said power twice. You may not be aware of this, but we have experienced multiple power outages since the opening of the Royce. These events have occurred during the summer and as recently as this week. 4, school bus stop located at Pine Hill Drive adjacent to the proposed development. It is my intention to submit grandma requests for the number of accidents on Van Winkle Expressway from 4800 South to 6400 South since the opening of the Royce. I also intend to submit grandma requests to Murray City Power and/or Murray City to see how many power outages we have had this year compared to the last 2 years. I contend that the consistent building of massive apartment complexes has put an undue burden on Murray City infrastructure. Murray City used to proclaim itself as Tree City USA. We have become Mega High Residential Apartment City USA. You may not be aware of the fact that Murray small business owners have had their business license fees increased by $300 just a few weeks ago. Your duty as Planning Commission is to preserve the quality of life for Murray City residents. do not cater to deep pocket developers. I urge you to review data on preservation of the wildlife on the creek, traffic congestion, and power supply before agreeing to rezone this property to a high-density multifamily zone. I appreciate your time and consideration. Cynthia and Scott Polson, representing William and Jacqueline Stone Breaker.
The other comment we have is from Robert M. Benedict. I am sorry that I cannot be there in person today, but I am traveling. Thank you for reading this out for me. When this project first came before the Planning Commission, I argued against changing the zone on former Larson property to allow the property to serve as a buffer between the higher density housing and the existing neighbors. This is now the third time the project is in front of the commission, and I am very pleased to see the land will remain single family. The commission's job is a difficult one in weighing all the competing interests: the quality of life of the existing neighbors, the economic interests of the developer. The commission and the city council have their own perspectives and interests. I do think this current plan is the best possible outcome. Hopefully for Lotus, the development makes economic sense and the neighbors have a reasonable buffer. I have had extensive discussions with Lotus about the project. While I am sure Lotus would prefer to maximize the value of their project, they have approached our discussions with the best intentions and sincerity. I felt a real desire by Lotus to take into account the views of the existing neighbors. When this project first came before the Planning Commission, my neighbor Doug Jensen spoke against it and, quote, the Joni Mitchell song, "They paved paradise to put up a parking lot." Why not? They paved paradise to put up a parking lot. I'm beyond thrilled that Lotus is proposing a development that will preserve paradise. Thank you very much, Rob Benedict.
And that's all we've received.
Okay, seeing no other public comments, I'll close the public comment period and bring it back for discussion or a motion.
Can I just ask a question about the boundaries, just because I want to make sure I understand? The outlined area, is the zone change, and what's the blue above that?
That's another piece of property that's owned by Salt Lake City.
I see. So it would be GO, that would stay GO.
Right.
This would go to RM 25.
Yeah, so that is owned specifically by Salt Lake City for their water lines. They don't really have any interest in developing or doing really anything with that property. I believe this one, and this one are all owned by Salt Lake City.
Okay, thank you.
So Zach, because of the 2.3 acres, at RM 25, it doesn't matter who developed it, would only be able to get 64 units, is that right?
Let me just, I want to do my own calculation before I say yes or no. Yeah, 64.46, so yeah, 64. No matter what.
No matter what, they wouldn't be able to get the 25.
The only way they could get up to 25 units per acre is if they do what's called the residential infill, residential density bonus.
Right.
Which is a section of the code. It has not been utilized to this date in decades.
Right.
Because it requires so much.
And he kind of spoke about like the challenges to doing that and why that wouldn't be a.
I believe to get three additional units per acre, I think like a large percentage of the development must have like an affordability component, a percentage of it restricted to, I believe, 60% AMI, so area median income, in order to get that incentive.
And so to do like at RM 15, we'd be at 45 units-ish.
Say that?
What would it, if it had passed as an RM 15, how many?
On the 4?
Well, I mean, even now on the 3, right?
Okay, yeah. So on that, it would be 35.
35. So we're
On
talking.
the 2.93.
Well, yeah, what about the 4?
47.
So.
They would actually get more. One more.
Right, before, their application before, say, the city council had passed it, they would
Yeah.
have gotten one more.
What's the notice area again?
400.
400
feet.
feet?
Yeah, we sent 87.
I'm sorry. What was that? What was the question in the?
The notice, so what the distance area was for the notice. So we take the boundary line of the property, and then we do a buffer that extends out from the property 400 feet, and that's who we notice, send public notices to, on top of posting it on the state website and on the city website.
So everybody that lives close to this property got a notice about tonight's meeting?
Correct.
And their other meeting.
And every
Yeah,
other
they- all
meeting.
the- Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I was
will
trying to
say-
look up how many comments were done in the
Yes,
very
I was
first
gonna
one.
say, I was here when they came before, and there were a lot more comments,
Yeah.
a lot, yeah.
And
and
it could be that they're happy with this new proposal, it could be that they're exhausted.
That's what I was
Coming.
gonna say, I
don't
do
know.
think the multiple applications, they just maybe get burned out, and I don't know. But I mean, I personally am feeling like I wanna commend the developer, I think listening, taking out, from the first meeting, a lot of the comments were, save those trees. They were adamant about that. So taking the 1 acre out, giving a buffer to that neighborhood, I commend you. I think, good job. I love that. I mean, I expressed my frustration at the last meeting with the city council for denying, because I feel like they were so short-sighted in not wanting an RM15. They couldn't foresee that what would then be needed to make a project work would be higher density. And I expressed this last meeting. I think it's really a shame that they denied that. I personally would, even with this acre out, wish that this was an RM15 application, which it's not.
Can we have a little bit more discussion about saving paradise? I'm just not convinced. I appreciate what they're trying to do. They're trying to meet us halfway, because I do feel like we messed up by the city council not approving it when it was RM15. So they took out that 1 acre, and so that it won't be part of this condo development. But I don't foresee it staying a treed lot forever. They still own it, and they're gonna flatten it out, and make it a parking lot, or clean it up and make it just because it's not.
Well, there's things in the ordinance about what they could do, right, with that
Yeah, and they can still incorporate elements of this into their project. They could incorporate it into their project as potential green space or anything else. I know that their intention is to, again, this isn't a project, and we're not even talking about that specific piece of land. We're only really considering this one. But from what they've expressed to me is that they plan to keep the home that's on the R18 piece.
Well, okay,
But-
don't sell it to us.
No, but-
And then based on a project.
No, but to Lisa's point, if they
Yes.
decided to come back and they wanted to do something with this property, that doesn't mean that
Saved
would get
paradise.
rezoned as R1, as something other than R18, right?
Well,
Like, that would
it's
be.
part of my quagmire, because I don't want to talk about a project, but we keep acting as if we've saved paradise, when we don't know if we saved paradise.
But they
because-
would have to go through that process to rezone that one property. That
Yeah, the
doesn't mean
one
that they would
property.
get it zoned different than R18. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that
It'll come back and be zoned GO,
Even
and put the garbage dumpster there. and-
even
I
at
mean-
staff level, they might not say this is an appropriate place to have.
Right now, they could go cut down all those trees.
Today.
What
They
we're
already
doing
own
is
it.
not saving paradise. They could go cut them all down tomorrow.
Okay.
But for them to redevelop it in a different way, they would have to go through this process again to do something that's not R18 on that acre.
If this came in either with the 2.93 acres or the 4 acres, I wasn't involved before. At RM15, it would be a no-brainer for me to say yes. Jumping up to the R25, kind of going back with the same logic we had on the previous item, it jumps up, we're spot zoning, and we're looking at the character of the neighborhood, and I'm not sure that that goes along with either of those things.
So
To
I.
go to RM, to go to, whatever it is, RM25.
So I would say that's why I specifically put in the staff report why Miller Estates is different. Because you can look at a color on a map and yeah, it doesn't match.
Well,
But how the place is actually working is different. Right?
I agree. I think what you're saying, Zach, is right. I think if we look at the other property, which, I mean, these are apples and oranges, really. But if we look at the other property, for me, it's a property rights thing, and here's what I look at. For me, I look at, this property owner wants to do something. Is he infringing on other people somehow? And on the other case, I think he was, because he was infringing on what these people expected their land to be around them. And I think if we rezone that, then, it was out of character for that area, and it would affect those people. And here is the same thing. It's going to affect those people, but we have nobody that came here and told us that they're unhappy with this new proposal. If we did, I would be out. And if this was an RM15, I would be in, 100%. And so RM25 is hard, but.
I think you articulate.
But we have, the road isn't gonna be worse, we already have that. The power isn't gonna be worse, we have that in the report. In fact, it probably will help the area when we have a new development, so I don't know. That's just I'm just saying my thinking out loud.
I'm looking at more of the idea that we're spot zoning something that, and maybe this is the wrong way to look at it, that's taking at least 2 steps up in density.
Well, it's not right next to its RM15.
Well, but, okay, that's part of my question.
So that's
then.
one, is there an RM20?
I don't know.
I guess
why
it is 2 steps,
we know
sorry.
why across the street, it's zoned RM10, but you're saying it's actually more like RM20?
Yeah, based on the number of units in the acreage, it is running at an RM20.
At 20?
I'd have to double check. I think that's what I said.
Do you have the future land use of this?
There you go.
Was office, so the future land use was still office.
Mhm.
But I do feel like there's an argument to be made that when this general plan was written, you couldn't foresee that a lot of future land use of office would be higher density residential.
If this was zoned, agriculture,
Right.
then I would have a completely different opinion.
But I do think that the next general plan that will be written, and maybe we'll update our ordinances and make the process, less of a blockaded structure, but the next general plan, I think a lot of office would be future land used, either mixed use, high density residential.
If you look specifically across Van Winkle, you can see the dark blue across the street. That's actually future land used for professional office. It says that the commercial will go away, the retail will go away to professional office. That will not happen at this time. Professional office is outside of very specific areas is dead. It's not coming back anytime soon.
Right, so that's my point. So when this general plan was written,
We anticipated
right,
a
we couldn't
different market.
foresee that we now are, however many years later, like
I'm-
7 or?
Again,
Something like
I apologize. What did you say about the dark blue across the street?
Yeah, the dark blue across the street, if you look on the future land use map legend, it's designated as professional office. So, if somebody were to come in for a rezone, to be in line with that, we would recommend the professional office zone. And we couldn't have expected, I don't anticipate, there's only been one property in this city that has rezoned to professional office, and that was in 2019, and now it's up for sale. And
Then across the street now is
Another
commercial,
plan
is
that
that
never
correct?
came.
Exactly.
Exactly, that was approved, but didn't, I think I know what property that is too.
you sure do.
I,
Across the street's not in Murray.
again,
And-
I would,
Across the street is in Murray. But let me
Yeah.
also, let me clarify, because I just looked in the staff report to make sure. So, Miller Estates, is running, has 15 acres, has 294 residential units, that comes out to 20 units per acre. Based on the current zoning as we allow right now, it would be required to be in the RM25, not the RM20. The RM20 only allows 17 units per acre as a base density.
And it has 20.
It's running, it is operating at 20 units per acre.
It feels, I will say it feels like it's not that dense because it has so much open space and stuff. The feel of it is, not as dense as it actually is. So, I don't know.
If the Murray City Council denied it at R15, why wouldn't they deny this one?
He feels like he's met the concerns by taking that 1 acre.
I think
out.
he's met the concerns.
I mean, it's an argument he can make, but.
Yeah,
I do feel like it's a hard jump to
Yeah,
get.
and I can't speak for the city council on what they will or will not do.
Yeah, and that's probably
yeah.
not the right question, but
But, no, go.
no, I just,
I think we forward whatever recommendation we think we should do, regardless of what they are gonna do.
yeah, no, I agree. And my comment really is, I think it's a great compromise. I think Jake articulated it well, comparison to the previous project, the difference. It's been going on for a while. I think we needed to move on. And so I think it's a great compromise, and we know the issues from the past and why the city council didn't approve it at R15, and that's my opinion.
But let's hope that the city council, when they review these minutes, will recognize that future land use designations of office are not going to stay office. So I think that should very much be taken into consideration, and it should have been considered when this was an RM15 application as well.
I think this is,
Hold on a second.
this kind of a use for this particular property is probably one of the best uses for it. Sometimes I'm not real thrilled about higher density housing, but in my opinion, that seems like the obvious choice for this piece of property. Even though I have some trepidation about it, I would like to make a motion that we
Wait, can we discuss just one more time? I just have one more discussion before you make a motion.
Okay, I thought there was a lull, so I thought. we were
Sorry,
done.
just because I want to figure it out. Someone do the math with me. I think 294 units and 15 acres is actually RM20. It's 20 units per acre.
Well, but you can actually.
But you
put
can't,
20
so
units
unless
per
it meets
acre.
certain criteria.
I'm talking about the Miller Estates across the way. I'm just-
Exactly, it would not meet the requirements under the
So they'd have to
RM20
be
to
zoned
get the
higher.
additional
Only put
densities.
17 in there unless you do those special things he was talking about.
The base density of every zone is 3 less
Oh,
than
I
the-
see what you're saying. Because it's 28 units per acre, it would have to be qualified for 25 unless it did that. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep,
That's
yep.
what I wanted. Thank you. Okay.
I read through that today after reading this.
Okay.
That's why I want to get rid of the way that those are written. Like, I'd rather them just be what they are, instead of going 3 less than everything. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, and it brings up a greater point that even, the public expressed today, that having all of the pieces of redeveloping a project gets everybody more on board of what that project's gonna look like, right? So I you don't have to then be doing math about like what actually the density would be and all of that kind of stuff, so. Is there a motion?
I wish we had the option of making zoning changes with a time limit on them. Yes, even though it's with some trepidation, I still am going to move that we approve forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for the requested amendments to the future land use map, redesignating the property located at 825 to 865 east, 4800 south, from office to our high-density residential.
I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Is that Richards?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Henry and a second by Commissioner Richards to forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for the requested amendment to the future land use map, redesignating the property located at 825 through 865 east, 4800 south from office to high-density residential. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, we can take a vote.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Milkovich,
Same quagmire, I hate, I think the densities are too large, I like the project. I'm trusting you to do the project, yes.
Commissioner Hacker.
You.
Hacker. Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
Commissioner Haristo,
Yes.
and Chair Patterson.
Yes. Okay, our next item,
We gotta
amend
make the
the Murray City zoning map.
Oh, sorry.
Is there a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion for this one also, that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the requested amendment to the zoning map, designation of the property located at 825 to 865 East, 4800 South, from GO General Office to RM 25, multiple family high-density residential.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Henry and a second by Commissioner Pearson to forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for the requested amendment to the zoning map designation of their property located at 825 through 865 East, 4800 South from GO General Office to RM 25 multiple family high-density residential. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Okay. Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson.
Yes.
Commissioner Milkovich,
Same statement, I wish it was smaller, we've been around and around with this, but you're working to make it look more like RM 15, RM 20, so if you stick to your word, yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker.
Yes.
Commissioner Haristo,
Yes.
and Chair Patterson.
Good luck with the city council. Yes. Okay, well, congratulations. Hope the next steps go good. Can we maybe take a 5-minute recess before we do short-term rentals?
You are more than welcome to do that.
Good? Okay.
I don't know if we have to.
We're in recess. Do we have to vote on it?
You say it, yeah.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess. All right. For the record, it's 9:01. I don't know.
That's fine.
Let's resume our meeting with agenda item number 10, residential short-term rental text amendment.
Okay, yeah, so this is a request from city staff to amend section 17.76.020 and 17.84.060 related to permitted and conditional uses, and the creation of section 1776.190 residential short-term rentals in the Murray City Land Use Ordinance. So why we're here, the city council instituted a temporary land use regulation, which is also known as a moratorium on short-term rentals because of a loophole found in the above referenced sections of the land use ordinance. So the city council held a workshop on August 26th to work on some policy direction. The draft ordinance was presented to the council and committee of the whole to kind of discuss some of that on September 17th. This moratorium expires of January of 2025, so there is a bit of a hurry up on this. So what's the commission deciding this evening? So we're asking for a recommendation to the city council. The planning commission is reviewing the potential regulations, and staff is asking for comments, changes, and a recommendation to move forward with the regulation on short-term rentals. So if the commission decides to move forward with the recommendation, this will move on to the city council for their review. And if the commission tables the item for changes, the commission will need to provide a date that the item will be heard again. I don't know why that says recap, but it was, so what is a short-term rental? So any dwelling or portion thereof that is available for use or is used for accommodations or lodging of guests, paying a fee or other compensation for a period of less than 30 consecutive days. So in the ordinance, it defines three different types of short-term rentals. There's hosted sharing, which means the owner of the property is present during a guest stay. Unhosted sharing, meaning the owner leaves the home during a guest stay. And dedicated vacation rental, which means the owner does not live on the property. These proposed regulations remove or disallow unhosted and dedicated vacation rentals. It would only allow for hosted sharing at this time. So some of the things inside the requirements or regulations are parking requirements. Specifically, so for example, an addition of 2 off-street parking spaces would be required by zoning ordinance for like a single-family home. An additional half space per bedroom or sleeping area would be required with a minimum of 1 extra space. So if they're renting out, I have 2 examples here, 2-bedroom hosted sharing unit renting 1 room would be required to have the 2 spaces, but then they'd be required to have 1 additional. It's technically 0.5, but we'd round that up. So they'd need a total of 3. So a 4-bedroom unit where the owner is occupying 2 of the rooms and they're renting out 2 rooms would be required to have a total of 4 off-street parking spaces.
Can I ask a question while you're on that?
Please.
Slide, just so we don't have to go back. So why don't we just have the parking requirements be on-street or off-street? Are you saying it has to be off-street park? I see. I'm sorry. I just read that completely backwards.
Okay.
And it makes more sense now,
Okay.
so I'm going to just be quiet.
That's fine.
But, I mean, I guess while we're on this, so this is a situation where somebody could do like with an ADU, right? Like they live in a small unit in the basement, even a studio, right? But they rent out 4 of their rooms, right?
So the way that the code is written is that they could only rent to 1 party at a time.
But I mean, you have a family,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
so,
And
yeah,
they
4
come and
rooms.
they stay in all those rooms. But a family comes in 1 car, but they now are required to have all of these off-street parking places.
Yeah, that mostly, that is correct.
It's very overparked.
It probably is a little overparked.
Right.
But I really don't know of another way to still require it. Because, I mean, you could have that, but you also could have a small caravan of people, you know, a family going in multiple cars. Like me and my family in the past have traveled to Disney, right? And we've taken 3 cars, you know?
Right, and did you all park at your Airbnb? There was enough
Well,
off-street parking?
I've never stayed in an Airbnb, but we did have
Never?
to. Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I am not,
I don't know if you can write this
I-
code then, Zach.
so I'm showing, I'm going to be explaining this and I'm advocating
sorry.
for this, but
Another time
personally,
for questions.
fundamentally, I don't believe in Airbnbs and I won't stay in one.
Ooh, okay.
I think it takes away from housing, whatever. It's fine. That's all my personal opinion. That doesn't mean anything about what I'm talking about here. But,
Okay, I guess my question is, and maybe, do you want me to wait till the end?
no, it's fine.
Have we looked at other cities' Airbnb requirements?
So that's very difficult to find because a lot of them don't regulate. They'd usually have the option of, that we thought we had, but we didn't, which
Okay,
was,
then.
if it's not permitted, it's not conditional, it's not allowed. And
Wait, they're operating under, if it's not permitted, it's not allowed? Other cities are?
yeah, so, yeah.
But they're probably operating under the same situation that we were operating under, which is there's no ordinance, so there's no enforcement. So you can kind of do it, right?
They kind of did, other cities do it all sorts of different ways. But the ones that I have looked at, this was based off of other city and best practices through the 2021 code that I wrote. When we looked at this then, this is the same requirement that was in the 2021 code.
They have, okay, that's a lot of parking.
It is. It could be. It has the potential to be. I don't think you'd ever get that high, really. I mean, 4 off-street parking spaces really isn't that much if somebody has a 2-car garage and 2 spaces outside of their, you know, in their driveway.
I mean, ideal for me.
Yeah, yeah.
If we're denying somebody because they have a bunch of stuff in their garage, but they now cannot use, they now can't park, right?
I don't specify, and this is kind
You
of,
can't look in their garage.
I can't look in their
No,
garage.
I agree though,
Yeah.
but somebody now wouldn't qualify.
Sure they would, because all I look at is that you have the space.
So they'll be parking on the street. Okay.
They could park on, they probably will. What we're trying to do is regulate the best we can. We can't anticipate everybody's good or bad intentions. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to get anywhere at any time.
I'm just saying you're over-regulating.
I think-
That's my point.
That's true too. I mean, we've already cut this back to only one of these 3 different options, hosted sharing. There's always neighbors parking on the street. Yeah. Always. So.
Move this up. I can't hear you in the mic.
Oh.
Just a little bit.
I couldn't hear you when you asked me to vote too.
Well, Rebecca needs
So
to
I
hear
think
you.
that parking on the street, like I said, there's, every street I drive down, there's always people parking on the street, whether they're
course.
visiting
Yeah.
or whether they're residents.
Yeah, and so that's why we're trying to make this, we're starting somewhere. This, and really that's what we're doing, is getting us to a point where we're starting to regulate. If it becomes too onerous, that doesn't mean it can't be changed. That's the great thing with code, is that we can always change it. And this is kind of just the baseline starting area. And again, the city council has already asked that we report back in a year after this is adopted, reporting back in a year of what's happened and coming back. So I think we will probably learn some things on this and we might make changes.
Whose job is it to enforce this?
So it will be the CED department's job to enforce that in conjunction with the police. So as part of this, so police have a code enforcement section.
You're not gonna show an officer at the door.
Yeah, no. So it's both. We do both. There's 2 officers in code enforcement and 1 zoning enforcement. When this moratorium went into effect, I have been very clear and with the city council that there are other costs that are coming with this. And that will be most likely a budget request for another code enforcement officer. We've already anticipated changes to the permitting process, changes to, we've already purchased a software that allows us to track existing and any new short-term rentals in the city. I think it combs 70 different sites that do.
So do you have those numbers?
I have not yet. We haven't gotten the numbers of how much it's going to cost.
No.
Oh.
Of how many short-term rentals are currently
So when we
operating?
received the demo in early September, it was, I believe, 150 that were operating in Murray.
Oh, it's so much smaller than I thought it was going to be.
Well, you also have to take into account that is in early, it was actually mid-September probably. That's not a great time to travel.
Wait. We're talking about all of this for 150 Airbnbs in the entire city.
Yeah, but I think
During that week that they pulled.
I don't
And
think we're
off-
talking about them for the 150, we're talking about it
But-
for everybody else that could be doing it, but is following the law.
Well,
Well,
everyone right now is following the law because there is no law.
Well,
but I,
Technically, all 150 of them were not.
And all of those are hosted sharing?
I have no idea.
No, because there was no ordinance
The
about what
demo-
they could do. They could
The
be-
demo just showed us what they were. Because it was the demo of the software that we ended up purchasing. It just showed us what they were using. It's called Host Compliance by Granicus.
I think somewhere in our discussion, we need to, I don't know if I'll do this justice, but try to summarize some of the in-depth discussion we've had in the past on this topic. And my oversimplification is, I have a female friend whose husband passed away, and she's not in our Murray, she's in Salt Lake, but she's rented out her basement, she's rented out rooms upstairs, she's rented out her garage to other women. She has like 4 different women living to help cover the mortgage. And I want her to be able to do that. And that's a good use of housing, but it's short-term rentals, part of different, yeah. Okay, so some of it's short-term rental, it's a good income revenue for her. On the other far side, there are some places that maybe aren't Murray, but we still need to be aware of, like New Orleans, where a company has come in and bought houses on both sides of the street for 3 streets, and it is a party nonstop. The people on the other side of the streets afraid for the school district is falling apart, income for public, the tax dollars spent on what aspects of public life haven't been allocated because this company doesn't vote in favor of that, they own the majority vote, so that's the other extreme end of this. So we need to be aware of both ends, right, in this discussion. I mean, I just say that because I don't know if we keep neglecting, not yet, but I feel like we're not thinking of the negatives to the extent they could be
I'm not saying
negatives.
there should be no regulation. I think
Yeah.
we should be regulated. I actually am shocked at how low the number is because I don't think that we're having a huge impact on the city. Now, maybe more people do that. We don't want them buying up houses. I get that. We want to have some kind of regulation, and we'll go through more things. I feel like this short-term rental text amendment is so punitive that even with no rules, there's only 150. I mean, I don't know how anyone
Look at that in November. December.
qualifies.
I think
How
looking
does
at-
anyone qualify for a permit on
Skiing
this-
season, yeah.
on these rules? This is basically saying, which I think is unfair, no one can, it's just such a high threshold that you'd have to meet.
It is
to
a
be able
very
to do
high
it.
threshold, I'm not going to lie, but I think at this point, we needed to start somewhere, because we are within this 6-month timeframe, right? for a
Right, but
moratorium.
right now, we're not having issues with the 150 that we already have, and if we do, it gets reported to the police, who also would be the code enforcement people. Like, we're solving a problem I don't necessarily know if we have. But
I
anyway,
don't know,
sorry.
Preventive medicine's always better than,
I agree. I'm not saying we
reactive.
don't need regulations. I'm not saying we
Just
don't
maybe
need
not
to
No,
have
I
an
agree.
ordinance right now as it is. Anyone can operate. Airbnb because there is no ordinance to enforce
Right.
a
So-
way to not.
But I
do
think the
I've
point you're
avoided-
making maybe goes back to something I said earlier about maybe we're being a little too conservative on the way we're writing this.
And
I mean, because there's not a huge problem here, we're trying to,
Right, I understand that
strict.
you're writing this at the discretion of the city council. But we can make changes. The other option, though, is that we start somewhere and we add regulations based on how many problems we run into and have, right? Why start at the other end?
And I think that's just a difference of opinion between the city council and the planning commission.
Right.
In how they want to
I think
approach it.
When you start on the broad end, is that what you're talking about? It's gonna be a lot harder to pull things back
So that,
if it gets too out of control.
thank you, Commissioner Hacker, because
However, I
that,
believe you, this is
Right.
pretty conservative.
so that actually
Right.
brings up a good point. And I didn't really want to get into it too much, and therefore I didn't bring it up a lot. But, so I'm going to do it with hopefully not opening a big can of worms. But of those 150 that we're operating, it's been determined by legal counsel, outside legal counsel, that those are all now grandfathered in and are allowed to continue for all time.
but
If they
you
meet
said
the-
you don't even know the nature of what those are.
Right.
But I will know.
So I'm not sure how
So
it's relevant.
I will know. Like I said, the demo,
well,
the person
when-
that was
when
selling
you
me,
know
let me
that-
finish, please, let me finish. The person that was demoing the product to sell me was telling me, yes, you can know what this is once you buy this product. Then I will know, but I don't have access to that product yet because I literally just charged the credit card on Tuesday.
Yeah, but I think the point was, you said it's grandfathered in. Is it, when you say that, do you mean it's grandfathered in no matter what it is, or it's grandfathered in if it meets this? So if
Nope,
it's,
whatever
As
it
they are
is.
operating currently.
so all
They've
150
been
could
operating
be
without an
unhosted
ordinance, so there's
sharing.
no enforcement mechanism. So they can continue to operate with they don't have to come in
Don't say-
line with
Shh,
these.
don't say that on the record, because then everyone else is gonna jump on real
It's the
quick.
truth,
I mean,
though.
it doesn't matter much. It's
It doesn't
150
matter much,
houses.
but right,
No,
I mean-
I don't know.
What doesn't matter much?
The grandfathering of these houses, I think, is
Well, but
irrelevant
I think
to
the
us
nature of
doing
what
we're doing
kind of
today.
short-term rentals they are is relevant, because it speaks to what we ought to be regulating.
Well, and it could matter, because if I had money and I was sitting here now, and I know the Olympics are coming in 34, boy, I'm buying me 2 streets.
Yeah.
Right now, if I had that kind of money, I don't have that kind of money. But we've just said it on public record, if you buy it now, it's grandfathered in, doesn't matter, so I'm running now.
It was technically on public record in the city council too, so.
Hey, you just gotta close before January.
Because you know Murray's hot. They're
So-
probably in Sugar House
Sorry,
doing
okay,
that.
Okay, let's keep
going,
going, because, yes. So, I don't even know where I was. Parking requirements, okay, we're done. So enforcement, each day of so if they're found to be operating, without a permit or whatever, except for the ones that are non-conforming, it could lead to a Class C misdemeanor. I want to be very clear that, that we use the word could very specifically. There are certain laws and things that Mark could get into where legalese, we can't say shall be cited as a Class C misdemeanor. There's weird things about that. I don't want to get into it.
But
Go ahead.
Why? So each day, so I'm running for a year. You guys come in and you go, hey, you don't have a permit. So for 365 days, my minimum fine, if it goes to court, and I'm convicted of this, is 365 times 110. That's my minimum fine.
No.
Okay,
It's
so
the
tell me.
day we cite. and
Oh, it's the
forward.
day, so from the day I'm cited and continue to run it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct, Mark?
But-
Oh, wait, I'm gonna be told different, maybe.
It would be each time you're cited, it could potentially have that fine. So it's potentially a violation for every day you continue to operate. But you have to actually have a citation to have a reason to go to court. So
So let me just ask my question. I rent out my basement, short-term rental, today, a year from now, the city finds out, I'm not gonna be fined for 365 days?
Well, now we're into criminal procedure. You have to be able to establish a date and time for any
No,
specific
I understand. I
violation.
put it on the thing and you guys get it on your software and you know that I've been running a short-term rental for 365 days.
It's hosted, it's allowed, is it not?
Yeah,
So-
but I don't have a permit.
So I guess.
I didn't fill out the paperwork.
Would it apply in reverse?
So, let me be clear too. What we haven't gotten to yet is what is being proposed today would only potentially apply to new applications, new going
I
forward.
don't have an application. That's what I'm saying. I didn't fill out an application.
Right, and I think we'll get to this as we go through the ordinance. There's a permitting process you're supposed to go through.
I didn't do it, though.
Okay,
I didn't
so
do the
if
permitting
we find out
process.
there's a violation,
Yeah.
and code enforcement goes and finds that,
Yes.
you can be issued a citation.
For every day that I was,
Every day
did
that
not.
every day that a prosecutor could prove with evidence that you were in violation.
So what I'm saying is, if I ran for a year, because I posted it on Facebook, and they can prove it, I would be fined, if I'm convicted of this Class C misdemeanor, I would be $110 times 365 days,
No, but you're
minimum.
No,
I
it starts.
understand I have to get a citation.
So you can't go
No.
post backwards. You could stop on the day
This
you're
is why I'm
cited, right?
asking this is why I'm asking the question. Is it from the day I'm cited and I continue to operate, or from the day that they can prove I was operating?
From the day this goes into effect, there would have to be evidence to show that you were in violation.
So we pass this tomorrow, city council passes it tomorrow. I run for a year without an application.
A prosecutor has to have a witness that says they could testify they stayed in your
They can
place.
find that. I posted on Facebook, right?
That's hearsay. I mean, we can get it.
Okay, I'm just saying, they can prove that
I.
I was doing it,
But you
right?
have to find 365 people to do it. Murray's not going to do that. Because every day you rented it to a different person, right?
No. Well, yeah, I did, but I ran it for a year. I had it booked the whole time.
But I guess our point is you could stop. So yes, that would be ridiculous. If I find you $365,000, that'd be ridiculous. But if I hand you a fine and you stop, then I find you $100, get your business license, you're good.
Well, I'm saying that as this reads and how I read it, if they think I've been running for 365 days and can prove it, then the minimum fine is $110 per day. We're putting it in code, right? So the minimum is that. Am I
Well,
incorrect in saying that?
Let me clarify as well. So the fine is not listed in the code. It just says Class C misdemeanor.
So,
Okay.
again, I
So-
don't want to get too, but there's a uniform bail schedule that recommends fines.
Okay.
It recommends for local ordinance Class C misdemeanors, a maximum fine could be, I think it's $12.50. The recommended fine is $110. A judge can do whatever he wants.
Okay, so this dollar amount is based on that, not based on what we want to do.
Right, this is
Correct.
based on the yes.
So.
So I probably could have
in
saved us
theory,
5 minutes
Mark,
by
what I
just saying
did is
that.
actually make it more complicated by
I
asking
got
the
it,
question
okay.
and put it in the slides.
So Jake, is your basement open for rental? Never mind.
I'm just saying that, is it in code that we're saying that the fine will be per day?
Yes.
No, the code doesn't say what the fine will be per day.
It says.
If you'll be fined
It's
per
a
day.
potential Class C misdemeanor.
That's all it says, so it doesn't say anything about,
A fine.
I know it doesn't say the amount of the fine, but does it say that they will be fined per day?
They can be cited per day.
Okay.
So
does that mean?
somebody would have to go out every single day and
Yes.
cite
That's-
every single day.
And we don't have staffing for
But
that.
we do that, we do that on a lot of zoning, other violations throughout the code. That every day a violation continues, you could be cited for.
But okay, I guess
Okay.
I'll just ask my question. You could just endlessly rack up fines, right? There's no like action that the city could take if you. I guess my question is, in previous conversations, there was ideas of like liens against the house, something that actually could have some kind of teeth in it, I guess, right?
Right, and I think what we've put in the draft is there's escalations to revoking your permit, to an injunction, to all those different options. You also realize, I think too, in this process, we'd obviously be working with them, hey, you've got these violations that are continuing. That's why, again, we've put in there, they may be cited daily. The officer has some discretion to work it out with them and try to say, look,
Right, but if they don't care.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm making more than I'm losing in fines, right? They could just keep going forever.
I suppose you could say that about any.
Yes, I mean, and that very well could happen, but again, we have to find at some point a regulation to move forward with. And, and we just need to we have to move forward with something and then evaluate what that ends up being.
Isn't that with anything though in the law? Like if I could just park wherever I want as long as I pay the parking ticket.
Exactly.
Well, and the hurdle to become legal isn't so high that it would make sense to accept the fine. I'm charging $200 a night, I'm gonna have to pay a $110 fine, so I still make $90, I don't care. Well, the hurdle to be legal is what's the application cost, you know?
Right.
So stop
but,
losing money to
same-
supply.
I mean, it's the same thing as like parking at the U. Like, I don't want to I'll pay $25 to get the most premium parking and I'll get a fine every day. I don't care. Like, that, it's the exact same type of thing. Like, I get more benefit out of paying $25 to be right outside the door of the building I need to get into than, you know.
Unless the parking permit's $100, you just buy the permit and stop getting the $20 fine every day.
Right, exactly. I mean, so really, we have to start somewhere, and this is what we're doing, is starting somewhere. I guarantee you, there's going to be changes at some level, at some point.
And just throw this out there too, who knows what the legislative session's going to do.
And I was gonna get to that, because I don't, the only reason I didn't bring it up is because the last time I brought it up, the council didn't make a decision, because they said, well, wait till the state says something. And so,
I'm gonna sit down on this.
I have been in the meetings with the interim legislative session, and they're going to be bringing it up this year. They've said that every year, but they seem a little bit more serious this year.
Sure, because you got the Olympics coming.
Exactly. Okay, can I continue? Okay. So, okay, we've hashed out the enforcement. So process to operate an STR, it's a staff level approval application with a site plan, floor plan, parking plan, proof of owner occupancy, proof of non-conflict with HOAs, and a business license. Here are the findings. They're in your staff report. And so we are recommending that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval for those sections and implementing the new section of the code. And now we can get more into discussion.
Well, can I actually open the public comment portion?
Yeah, if you want to do
And
that.
then we'll do discussion. I feel like sometimes we get into discussion, then we forget that we've never had a public comment.
Yes, for sure.
So, at this time, I would like to open the public comment, portion. If anyone wants to make a comment on this item. Do you receive any?
No.
Emails? Okay. Then I'll close the public comment portion, and now we can have our discussion. Now this time we didn't forget it.
Ask away.
I think I'm just gonna, I think for the most part, I think this is, I was fine with what I read here. I think it's too complicated. I think we should do away with the floor plan. We should do away with, we should just make it so simple that they pay, they tell us they're doing it. We don't have to go out and look at it. We don't have to get a floor plan from them. It's just, it's gonna be people drawing up a thing and it's not gonna matter anyway, I think. That's what I think. I think we should simplify it. We're already having some code enforcement. I mean, in theory, we would already have code enforcement if this was an issue, which apparently it's not much of an issue, right? Because even
I
if,
believe we've had 5 complaints
Okay.
in 3 years.
okay, so it's not much of an issue, so I don't think we should, I think we should try to make it as simple as possible, so we're not adding a burden onto the city to manage it. That's what I think. My other thing is CED director, I think is spelled out and then shortened to CED. Like it's both ways in here, so we should probably make that consistent.
I can clean that up
With you.
if you guys are okay with administrative changes to clean that up. I'm more than happy to do that.
That's
Would
all
you
I
go
got,
back
I
to the
think.
previous page in your presentation? Well, again, the one that had that one. I don't see anything in here that an unhosted short-term rental would really be significantly different. I think the idea that we want to prevent party houses and we want people to have responsibility and ownership, if they have proof of owner occupancy and they leave for a week or weekend or two or whatever the limit is for a short-term rental, and coming back to their own house, I think they're going to have some responsibility to make sure it's done by, or rented by somebody that's.
How would you determine that that's their primary residence?
We have that written into code.
That's right.
Into the code, we have it. They have to provide like a utility bill or their driver's license, something that shows that they actually live on site. But to get back to that point, that was originally presented in the 2021 code that did allow the unhosted sharing. And there were a few on the commission that did have concerns with the unhosted sharing. And then it is also the concern of the city council as well for unhosted sharing. And so we are, again, I think we are going really hard on it and restricting it.
And I guess I'm trying to come back a little bit to, I think what Jake's position is, at least in a sense, is maybe we shouldn't be trying to over-regulate it. We should just have a bare minimum in there so it's not abused, and make it as easy as possible for people to do it and not try to restrict it too much coming out of the gate.
So,
Because government regulations, it always seems to me like it's an awful lot harder to pull them back than it is to make them more restrictive.
So-
If we need to make it more restrictive, if you're saying we anticipate there may be changes, let's maybe anticipate that we've got to tighten it up because there is abuse, not say somehow we're going to back off because we've overdone it, because I'm not sure what would ever drive that.
And I would only say that in typical things, in how I manage and do things within the city, that's usually the approach I take. However, when it comes to regulations and stuff like this, is that, like Commissioner Hacker had mentioned, is that if we have a looser code and then impose stricter things, everything in the looser code is allowed to continue. It wouldn't address the problem of that issue, because it would be grandfathered in.
But Zach, what about the
Does
opposite,
that-
right? Like,
well,
what about
then
the people
I guess
that?
I've got a question for our attorney. Is that always the case? Can we not restrict something that's going on now? When we say we, the city?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the full question.
Zach's point is, if somebody's doing something allowed by the code now, if we change the code to make it more restrictive, they are automatically grandfathered in to where it is.
Well, yeah,
Is
you
that
can't,
real- is that true?
you can't pass laws retroactively.
Well, I know we can't pass laws that tell people what they did in the past can be cited, but from going forward, we can tell them, no, you can't do that anymore.
So nonconformities are,
I'm asking that as a question, not as a statement.
and I apologize. No offense to Mark.
Go ahead.
He's a great attorney. This is a land use question. It's a land use question is what you're asking. Nonconformity is spelled out in state federal law that if something was permitted to somebody as a property right, and then the city comes in and changes that to disallow it, that person is still entitled to do it. There are levers to pull that are called amortization that will phase that out. And initially, the city looked at that as an option for amortizing out these existing short-term rentals that are operating right now under this loophole, right? But what that resulted in was probably a management of 12 to 15 plus years of monitoring these until they actually came out to deny it.
Okay, and I think where I'm coming from on this is, I think people ought to have the right to do what they want to with their property as long as it isn't a nuisance. And if that requires
I know. I have a really hard time saying that word.
out over time, I think that's fair. But I guess I don't see the distinct difference specifically between hosted and unhosted. It's one of my hangups. That, and I guess while I'm on that same topic, your preamble and your purpose here, I don't think we even ought to state that it's to provide economic relief to existing other owners. It's just because it's their property, they ought to be able to do what they want with it. Again, as long as it's not a nuisance or doesn't violate like our zoning or whatever else, like we've talked about earlier.
Zach, does it go the other way, like the people that will qualify under this permit, and you've already said, we're gonna be making changes based on whatever? Do you then retroactively notify them, like, oh, hey, we had all these parking requirements, and we regulated how many rooms you could rent out, and like, whatever, like, we're not doing that anymore, so you're like, fine to rent it
Yes,
however you want?
that would be correct. That, yeah, they would be able to follow the new ordinance.
I'm assuming, I mean, we've discussed if it's too strict or not too strict, and this seems to be on the more strict end. But to your argument, I think the things that they're trying to address with this regulations are things that might potentially be a nuisance. They're not just trying to take away rights, they're trying to regulate aspects of this that might be considered a nuisance.
I can make the argument, I think, that it's not perfect. That the reasons you want to do hosted versus, or to prohibit unhosted versus hosted aren't necessarily valid. I can understand the non-owner. I'm down with that completely. Or the non-resident, whatever the term is.
Because I think it's how we're defining unhosted, meaning I might think of unhosted as someone that buys this property, says they're living there but never really does, has the utility bills because I'm paying all the electricity and utilities, and that's a nuisance because it's a party nonstop.
But if they were, I mean, that's why I asked the question, if they were verifying their driver's license, they could only have one property, right? They couldn't buy 5 different properties to do
No.
that.
I can own a property here in Wyoming, and my driver's license is the Wyoming property.
You're
and I
right,
live
you
here.
could do one in Wyoming and one in Utah.
Yeah, and I could live here and rent that out.
You're right,
300
you could,
days.
one place, right?
And I understand. I just don't want to do a lot of what ifs.
Yeah.
Because what ifs get us into a lot of problems, where we can always do the what if game, of, you know, I think we're trying to regulate something as much as we can currently, again, with the understanding that we can always pare it back and it will
Right.
allow for somebody to come
Well,
back.
that's what I was saying, because I don't think I'm too worried about it being restrictive, because if I want to go out of town next weekend and I have someone in my hosted one-night rental that's coming, I could go out of town. No one's going to report me. I won't be there, it won't be hosted, but it's not what I do 24/7, it's what I do. It's what I do once in a while. It's okay. It's not going to be, who's going to call and report, I don't know. And prove that I wasn't there.
I've got a question
Why
for
is it
Mark.
written to prohibit that?
Have many of these cities, others, have you seen any challenges legally to some of these other jurisdictions that are really more active? Have you seen?
So, one of the things that you're seeing is short-term rentals have kind of exploded in the last
Right.
few years. They're becoming more and more popular, they're becoming a bigger thing. So as far as regulations and case law and history that you can rely on, there's not a ton of it. With regards to the amortization issue that we talked about, Utah has kind of a court that has said one thing and the ombudsman that has said something else. So the problem with these, as you know, with any land use or zoning law, is it's this tangled web of balancing elements of private property rights with public interest.
Right.
So as we have imposed this moratorium, it puts a shot clock on us to come up with something that we have to have in place by January. So as we have looked at this, and as Zach mentioned, we've researched it. We've taken the one that was done in 2021. We've tweaked it a little, and we've run it by some other land use outside counsel that focus on land use, and have come up with this proposal at this point, based on the feedback we've heard from citizens and city council and those things. So there's not a ton of enforcement and regulation to draw on to see how it goes and which way it goes.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
I just want to clarify my position, because I think that I am in agreement with Commissioner Henry that I think as long as we're making sure that the homeowner is renting it out, I'm not sure I care much if they're there or not, but I understand why that could be beneficial. If there's an issue, the homeowner's there. If there's an issue and he's not, it's more difficult. And when I was saying we should cut stuff out of this, I think what I'm saying to cut out is stuff that it's not making this weaker, it's making it less burdensome on staff and the city.
And I agree. I think it is something that we will probably come forward with in the future, because it is quite onerous. I mean, like I said, we're investigating, costs that are going to result out of this. And, potential staff, reviewers, and all of that. So I understand that. I don't disagree that there is a lot in here that we have to manage. But with the understanding that I think we will, within probably exactly a year from now, you'll probably see some sort of changes to updates. And that's something, if you guys want the same thing as the council for us to report back a year after this is implemented, I'm happy to do that. And we can kind of have that discussion and plan that out so that we know how it's gone, what's happened. Because we're obviously going to keep track of, how many are actually listed as non-conforming, how many are, have applied, how many, we'll have all that data after this year, or from a year from January, we'll have all that information so that we can have a better holistic conversation about what may need to change, I think is kind of where we're at.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. This is what I think I heard, is you want us to approve it as it is and we'll clean it up later.
That's pretty much how, it's a starting point, because let me finish. After we, like I had mentioned and Mr. Richardson mentioned as well, is that we're on a shot clock, right? I only have until, I believe, January 3rd to get this done. And so we've, with everything else that we do as staff, making these presentations, dealing with applications, and then the attorney's office, we've only had so much time to craft an ordinance. And I think this is where we are at currently. So yes, unfortunately with government, it is pretty much we'll take what we have right now and we'll clean up as we can.
None of the things that Commissioner Pearson is suggesting can be done in that deadline.
If you as a commission want to make recommendations for that, we can take if you want to change things, that's fine. It would just require a motion, and we would take pen and scribble out things, and then we can take that forward. Yeah. But what I don't want to happen, but you are more than welcome, it just tightens my timeline a little bit more, is what I would prefer not to happen is that staff go make these changes and then bring it back to us. That's what I would prefer not to happen, because I don't think I could get things done fast enough to get it done by January 1st. So I would prefer that if we're going to have that conversation, that it happen this evening and that we make those changes now.
Would you be okay with us doing a motion where we were not exactly specific, but gave you guidance? Like if we just said, we want to recommend approval of this with the changes of removing unnecessary things like floor plan, blah, 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 blah. Or would you not like that?
I would not like that, just because that could open it up to
I
interpretation.
think we've studied it enough to really give it quality response.
How about you, we've got the proposal here, and we take it back next 2 weeks, and we come back next meeting with red line proposals.
Yes.
In
So,
2 weeks.
sorry, let me
Well,
just,
it'd be the
let me
First
restate.
week in November.
Yeah, let me restate what I think you said, is that the commissioners will come back with new red lines, right?
And have a real discussion about the real nuts and bolts of what you presented.
Meaning a just in-depth discussion about the items we want to change. So at the end of the discussion, we will say strike this, this, and this, and we'll agree upon it. Or add this, this, and agree upon it.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah,
can we really strike, like, could we say we want to strike, unhosted sharing, and that would be allowed?
You can, yeah. Or strike whatever section it is that, yeah, so dedicated vacation rentals and unhosted sharing arrangements are prohibited. However, I will say that I took out a large section of the 2021 ordinance that addressed a lot of things that were in the unhosted sharing. Like, if you guys remember, for the commissioners that were here, like the nameplate, the nameplate thing, the packet for that shows like when garbages need to be taken out, and city regulations and stuff like that. There was a big chunk of stuff that I deleted out of there.
So in order if it doesn't get through by January, then we're kind of in a conundrum because we don't have an ordinance in place and it's Wild Wild West. So we need to have something in place by the 4th. So as a committee here, we need to maybe openly talk about what items really bother us and which ones, because if we can live with a few things and strike floor plan tonight or agree to come back in 2 weeks and talk about these 3 things, maybe we could still do it in a timely manner.
If we strike unhosted, is the city council, is that a no-go? Like, there's no?
I know that is not, they don't want unhosted allowed. So I feel like I can confidently say that they would probably put it back in. Because that was one of the things, we sat in that room right there with markers and wrote, what should be allowed in what. We were going through each individual zone, like, should this be allowed here? Yes or no? Should this be allowed in this zone? And we went through pretty in-depth.
So this is saying, basically, it could only be Airbnb, because VRBO is only unhosted.
Well, like I had mentioned, with
Not necessarily, because
with
it's
that software,
ADU.
there's like at least 70 different platforms. I don't know what all those are. I know like Vacasa or something like that. I think that's what Marriott uses.
But if you had.
Right, it's eliminating a lot, right? Like, if you have any home share, swap,
Right.
like, there's a lot of sites that it's it's basically saying one by doing it this way.
But you could advertise it unhosted if I had an ADU in the backyard, so
No, you
they'd be in, No, that would be considered hosted?
ADUs are not allowed, writ large.
Basement
To be
with
used
its
as
own
a
kitchen,
shared
own access, own entrance?
Nope. If you have if you have a permitted ADU, it's not allowed anywhere.
You couldn't rent that out.
What? No, not,
And
yeah, you
short-term.
couldn't short-term rental that out.
After
That's
this?
written-
Perfect short-term rental. there you go.
If you remember when we looked at the short-term rent, when we looked at the ADU code back in August, I took out that definition of a short-term rental and we specifically put it back in. And so, yeah, they are not allowed in ADUs whatsoever, ever.
But I guess I was falsely thinking this would be the new definition of short-term rentals, because that's like a
Well-
20-page description.
Again, I knew this was coming down the pipe, but there you go.
I think I would probably be okay voting on it how it sits. I think it could be better.
I agree. I think it could be much better.
I think I can't even find where it talks about, having the floor plan.
It's in E.
It's in E, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
E, standards and requirement, E, and then.
I probably threw E
two.
away.
Yeah, it's E number 2B.
Oh, E2B.
Floor-
So-
C, floor plan drawing.
So, I mean, that's not gonna be that time consuming for the floor plan. I don't think it's necessary. But the thing that is gonna be time consuming is 9, inspections.
So, I mean, that would be done anyway.
Just because of the business license?
Mhm.
So if that's gonna be done anyway, why do we need to put it in there? If it's gonna be done anyway, kill 9.
So, let's see. I think.
Will you know any better in 2 weeks the nature of the existing 150? Will you ever know?
Yes. Yeah, when I get through the implementation side of the software, I will know.
Here's the changes I would suggest. We kill 9 altogether, no inspection necessary if we're doing one with a business license already, and kill 2, E2 altogether. And just have it say an application, a completed application form provided by the city and payment of all fees. Get rid of the proposed use, we know what the proposed use is, it's a short-term rental. The basic site plan, it's not necessary, I don't think. That would be,
I think they're trying to regulate how many rooms and stuff they're using.
Isn't 9 saying annually?
What?
Isn't 9 saying an inspection annually?
Yeah, it does say annually, but business licensing does get renewed annually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
yeah, but they don't come
But
out
they don't
every year.
inspect it.
I guarantee
They
they do
can.
not. They
Certain
can, but
ones-
they don't.
Certain ones do.
But
Yeah,
that
but
seems
then
the
this is
right
gonna-
amount of regulation.
Depends on the business, I guess.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only concern with that, with removing 2 entirely, I just don't know what the impact would be, is that, in D and E, so only one designated STR or STR area is allowed per dwelling, and then no person or persons may be housed separately and or apart from the dwelling unit in any tent, trailer, camper, lean-to, recreation vehicle, or other structure.
Where did you just read that? I'm sorry.
It's on 2D and E, it's on the next page.
Oh, I've got the wrong page up, sorry. They're all out of order because I don't know what, there's no page numbers.
No, I
and so
apologize, that's my bad.
I don't know.
I
Oh,
have
okay.
to love that. Back in the day with Jared, I used to always say, please, please put page
I know.
numbers.
That's what happens when I am putting a packet together at the APA conference.
Yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. I think this would be better with these changes. I mean, I don't feel that strongly about them. I think we should make it as simple as possible, but.
That's part of the reason we took out the requirement for like a nameplate and those other things, was because I thought that was onerous for somebody that's just doing hosted sharing anyway, that the person will be on site, so there was no reason to keep like that contact information for the owner.
It's onerous for unhosted sharing.
What?
Having a nameplate, but
I know.
those rules are onerous for even if there isn't a host on site, because all of the people, maybe because you don't use Airbnb, someone who uses it all the time, you're always communicating with the host.
Yeah.
There is no.
What the nameplate was for a neighbor, like if there was a problem at the house.
Right,
the neighbor
it's so weird. It's so weird. That's not how.
I do think, I mean, I understand, we're not putting the nameplate in here, but I understand the police get called because there's a party going on, they get to the house, they have no idea who to contact. I understand the idea, but it doesn't matter because it's not there, so.
Well, I agree with you, Jake. We should make it as simple as we can, but starting to just cut things out here and there without looking kind of at a coordinated downstream effect is, I don't know if it's if we're gonna end up with kind of a patchwork quilt at the end, or it's clear that the council doesn't want these.
Mm-hmm.
Very clear. And so,
The city council has reviewed this document as it sits?
I don't think word for word, but in the concepts, yes.
All I would ask is if we put forward an approval motion, that in your meeting with city council, if they're going to change this at all, if we're gonna go start changing it, then you maybe mention some of the conversations we had.
Oh, for
Because,
sure.
you know, I have no confidence that they're going to listen to this meeting and listen to what we're talking about right now.
I agree.
I guess don't even know if I should say that, in which case, why are we even looking at it?
Which I understand that entirely. You are the land use authority. It's in the code that you guys,
But they have
Review.
something in mind that they want.
I,
They're not gonna take our recommendations, and they're putting in something that incentivizes people to not get a permit.
Sure.
And just hope they don't get caught. It makes, I feel like as it's written, it makes no sense to me. So unless there's further discussion.
I guess I'll just state, I don't think I would support or vote to support this as restrictive as it is from both what I said before about the not allowing unhosted and the things, and trying to make it simpler. I think this is too onerous as it is. If the city council doesn't agree with me, they're elected, they have the legislative authority, but if they want my recommendation, it's gonna be a little bit more on the side of personal liberty than it is restriction. And I would request either way that you please strike out that allowing STRs is intended to provide economic relief sentence from your purpose in the preamble.
so just like before, it would require a motion to amend it.
I don't know, I have,
Not to recommend approval, just to look back at it.
I guess I'm not as strongly opposed to it as some of you
I mean,
are.
we could do that. We could just not recommend approval, and then you'll have to explain why. And then they'll can do whatever they want.
Oh, that puts you under the, is that a self-imposed timeline?
What,
Is it a
the moratorium, it's a
That's the
statutory,
expiration,
yeah.
statutory.
180 days from the moratorium is in state code.
And I keep listening, and I don't know, I don't feel like I'm as opposed to it as some are, and it might be because of other personal experiences. I have a friend here who lives on Salt Lake, she's on the edge of Salt Lake, and they sold their house and moved because the two neighbors behind them and the side became short-term rentals with a hot tub, and their kids were out there with beer cans being thrown over and naked people in the hot tub all the time because it was a short-term rental, and that was 33rd South. I mean, I say that because in my mind, that's something that happens in New Orleans or in a party town, but it was happening here.
But that would be a short-term rental that would not be allowed if we approve this, right?
Right.
Why would it not be allowed?
Because the person has to live in the house. I mean, that's not to say that someone that lives in the house isn't gonna allow some naked people to go sit in their hot tub. But I think there is gonna be a lot of control of what happens in a household if the
Well,
household person is at the house.
I guess that's why I'm saying I'm not that opposed to this. I think it's a decent starting spot.
I'm also not that opposed to it.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see where it carves.
I'm not opposed to it either. I'm not opposed to it either.
So let's.
Well, then the people that aren't that opposed to it could make a motion, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think it's perfect, just like you said, but.
I hate to nitpick through everything, but I guess I'll make the motion right now, if nothing else, that you strike the sentence in the purpose that says allowing STRs is intended to provide economic relief to existing property owners who might otherwise be forced to leave a neighborhood, thus promoting and preserving stable and affordable housing in the city. My purpose is that I think it's irrelevant. If you want to make me have to do it that way, that's what I'll do.
Is there a second on that motion? Seeing none, no? Okay. Motion fails.
Commissioner Henry, I agree with what you're saying. I was very close to seconding it. I agree, this is not necessary to be in there, but I don't think it matters that much. I guess
mean-
that's why I didn't second it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we talk about the motions
Because
more?
the reason that I bring that up is that we're trying to read into their things that are irrelevant to the law, to the regulation. And I think we're trying to also sound virtuous in the process. If this is worth doing, it's worth doing it on its own merits, not trying to justify it within the law itself or within the regulation, the ordinance.
But then the following sentence is along the same vein. This section also intends to stabilize neighborhoods by promoting homeownership and preserving long-term. And I think part of the opinions, if you will, or the supporting evidence that we put in this is for future boards who are looking at it to understand why this exists. So it's the purpose.
And part of my point is I can't support the previous sentence as part of the purpose. I was trying to put a little bit of lipstick on the pig, and I'll just
Still a pig.
vote no as, if we decide to approve this or recommend this.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the city council for the request to amend the Murray City Land Use Ordinance amending sections 17.76.020 and 17.84.060 and enacting section 17.76.190 residential short-term rentals as presented in the staff report.
I have a motion. Is there a second? Okay.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hristo and a second by Commissioner Malkovich to forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for their request to amend the Murray City Land Use Ordinance, amending sections 17.76.020 and 17.84.060, and enacting section 17.76.190, residential short-term rentals. Is there discussion on that motion?
Okay.
Okay, let's take a vote.
Commissioner Hersto,
Yes.
Commissioner Milkovich,
Yes?
Commissioner Henry,
No.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson,
So dramatic.
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker,
I think we're being a little disingenuous and unfortunately, Commissioner, being a little slack in our responsibility to give something to the council that we believe in. I don't think we believe in this, no.
and Commissioner Patterson.
Well, I didn't agree with it when it was written in 2022 or whenever that was, so no.
Okay. 4-3, right?
4-3? Yeah, so motion carries.
Yep.
Okay, is there any additional business?
No, except that I have a flight at 8 in the morning, so.
Oh. Uh-oh.
So it's fine, you guys, it's fine. No, everything's
I
good.
hope you're already packed.
And then, no, I'm not, actually.
Uh-oh.
Jason's texting me, and he's like, what do you want? I'm like, just T-shirts.
Throw it all in.
No.
Okay, well, if there's no further business then.
Nope, no further business, really.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn at 10:07.
Second?
Second.
My head hurts.
So moved.
Where are we
Adjourned.
going?